And we're live. Welcome to 21 Live, the Red Pill edition. Today I'm live here from Orlando, Florida, and remotely we have Carl from Black Label Logic, Donovan Sharp for the first time, Illimitable Man, or I Am, we're going to call him, Rollo Tomasi from The Rational Male, Ryan Stone from Married Red Pill, and myself, of course, founder of 21 Studios. As a follow-up to last week's discussion on 2 weeks ago now, the discussion with Jordan B. Peterson, the Red Pill and the Blue Pill, we're going to dive into the recent events in Florida with the mass shooting down in Parkland. We're going to look at it from a intersectional dynamics perspective and red pill perspective. So not from the kind of mainstream points right now, focusing on guns, things like that, but the actual issues in terms of like the individual himself, all the events that went into it. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, with that said, let's talk about mass shootings and how that is affected by the red pill, feminism, and everything related to that. Rollo, do you want to kick it off?
Well, I have I've got a post that I put up right after this, and it kind of was a, I don't know, the kind of like the brainchild, I guess, of another post that I've done called Casualties. And I put that out, gosh, I think back in 2013 or something. I think it was right around the time of the shooting that happened in Colorado, the Aurora theater shooting. And, you know, all the specifics that were going in there. And really that post was just sort of a revelation that I had, is that whenever I hear about a mass shooting today, I only think of two things. I think either it's terrorism or it's some poor kid who just broke up with his girlfriend, or some guy who just broke up with his wife and lost his shit and went on a shooting spree because, you know, that is his final hurrah or his final exit before he either kills himself or, I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised that this kid didn't off himself, you know, before they got to him. There's a lot to sort of unpack with this, but I think one of the main things that the mainstream media is intentionally avoiding right now is this kid's history with his ex-girlfriend. And sure enough, I was right about that. You know, my first impression is this kid is probably depressed. He's probably this, you know, what I call a terminal beta. And he decided that he wanted to go and show the world that he was capable of killing everybody. And really, what was the spark that lit that off? And if you go on Google right now and you put in the search term Nicholas Cruz ex-girlfriend, you'll see what I mean. And I told you guys right before we came on, I told you guys to go check that out. And, you know, sure as shit, it's exactly what I talk about when I talked about it in my last post that I've done, and then also on Casualties, which was like from almost like 6 years ago now. And you know, I think that the longer that we have this lost voice generation, the less able those young men and boys are going to be in accepting this rejection and accepting, you know, I don't know, defeat, I guess, in a sense. I was on with Pat Campbell right after this shooting. I think it was like a couple days after the shooting. And this was before I even knew about the girlfriend incident. And what had happened, I guess, is just in a nutshell, his ex-girlfriend had broke up with him and then got together with another guy. And there's a series like this just really almost incoherent screed of this guy saying he was going to kill him. And he was, you know, even after the girlfriend had broke up with the new boyfriend, he was still going to kill her because he was the instigator of all of his misery. And really, I mean, if the kid was on edge and he wasn't going to shoot, this is what pushed him to that edge to go and shoot. And like I said, I was talking with Pat Campbell about this, and I told him, I said, this is the result of this lost voice generation that we were talking about last time. We were talking about Jordan Peterson. And we're looking at a generation of kids or boys who don't know how to deal with defeat. They haven't had that where they don't, first of all, they don't have a red pill awakening. And then second of all, they don't have any men to teach them how to come back from that and how to learn from their defeat and how to learn from their rejection. And like I've always said, I said, rejection is better than regret. Well, this kid's got a shit ton of regret right now, and all because he didn't know how to deal with the anger and the frustration, because we're looking at a generation of boys who, you know, is also called the participation trophy generation. You know,
Yeah.
we go out there and we want everybody to feel good about themselves, and we're all winners. And we don't teach our boys how to come back from defeat. We don't teach them how to fight back and to be a better person because of their losses, because they're never allowed to lose. They always have this, we're, like I said, participation trophy generation. It's always this, this atmosphere of coddling our boys, but then in the same instance, we're treating them like girls. We're teaching them like defective girls. And I think it was Camille Paglia or something who was talking about how we've come to a point where we are teaching our boys as if they are defective girls. And
Rolo, would you say that this kid, Nicholas Cruz, would you say it's an extreme case of kill the beta before it kills you? Or in this case,
absolutely.
kills other people?
Well, that's what I meant by terminal beta. I mean, this is the guy that's very socially, and I'm going to say this word, he's very socially retarded, but I mean that in the clinical sense, okay? Like his social intelligence and his social savvy has been retarded, and it's been retarded because of, the acculturation and the socialization and just the upbringing that, boys today, from the time they're 5 years old up until this kid was what, 18 years old? And so
19,
19. So from the time he's 5 years old to the time he's 19 years old, he's had this, what I call what is blue pill? Well, this is part of blue pill. This is a result of blue pill conditioning.
Let's get Ryan in on this. I think you had a point, and I am as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rolo brought up a really good point. Think about this. This guy was screaming for help, essentially, for God knows how long all those things were going on for. In all that time, all it would have taken is one man that he respected to tell him that bitches ain't worth it. Now think about how many failures have to happen along the way to get a guy to go 17 years plus planning a murder spree without one guy in his life having the aptitude or the accessibility to pretty much walk him off the edge. Now that's a huge failure of everybody. Now I know we always say it's fathers, but it's not necessarily fathers. I'm kind of one of these lost boys. My parents divorced when I was 5. I saw my dad annually for like 2 weeks. My stepdad is a whole other fucking ball of wax, but in that whole time, there was strong men in my community that when I would do stupid shit, not like this, but every guy does his own stupid shit when he's a kid. I kind of just say, like, relax, like this fucking girl should get over it. It's trailer trash or, just something. Now it's that thing that I wish more people would wonder about. An uncle, a dad, and the mom is, it's plausible that she'll never get culpability from it, but at some point during that, she never thought that he maybe needed a man to help guide him through this stuff. And that's a huge failure that nobody will discuss. And even bringing it up, the only response you're going to get back is, well, you're blaming her for doing this. Like, she put, like, fuck.
How did she isolate her son for so long from any adult male that would intercede for something like this, like you're saying, walk him off the edge?
Yeah, and I'm speculating. I see tons of girls that weaponize their kids so dad can't see them because she wants to get back at them. So I don't know if that's this, but I've seen it before.
Mm-hmm. And little man, did you have some comments with IQ related to this you wanted to get in?
Not particularly IQ, but what Ryan? How do you pronounce that? Is it Ryan or Ryan or how do you?
It's Ryan. It's
Ryan.
I don't know why it was spelled different, but ask my mom.
No, it's all right. I'll ask you. Okay, so what Ryan was saying about how he doesn't know how there could be like no man or like no strong male figure in a young boy's life. It's unfortunately and sadly extremely common, and it's like you've got all these young boys who have no strong male influence in their life. They either have no male influence in their life, like zero, none at all, like not even a soy guy, like no male influence in their life, or they only have a soy male influence in their life. And by soy, I mean a guy who is genetically a man, but basically in terms of personality and characteristics, just acts like a woman. He's like basically the guy who is married to a woman, but she wears the trousers and everything she says goes, and nobody respects this guy, right? So you have a whole generation of guys, at least one generation of guys, who either grew up in a household where the woman ran everything, or there was just no man, any man whether respectable or non-respectable man in their life whatsoever. And this is honestly, this is seriously bad for a male's mental health. It is really not good. And obviously, you know, a lot of guys who have not been adequately guided and educated and teached in life don't go and shoot up schools, right? But what we are seeing is like the far right, like the cusp, like the absolute insanity of this phenomena, where such a male just cannot handle. He's just so deluded and so lost from this lack of sanity and lack of logic and lack of guidance and this just political correctness and, oh, you're a male, so you're a piece of shit. And they act out in this violent manner. And you see this in polygamous societies as well.
That New York Times piece, actually, that Rollo and I were talking about before the show, hits on the same thing. Like, the boys are all just defective girls, like you guys always talk about.
Well, exactly. Defective girls, right? So the behavioral standard is comply to authority, be obedient, be high in agreeableness. And this makes you a good person. Right, and these things are more in line with the default feminine behavior. You know, you've got all these fucking kids who are like drugged up on like Ritalin, and I don't know. I don't even want to know what other substances they're using to try and medicate young boys these days, because I quite frankly think it's heinous.
Let's get Donovan in on this. He had a point he wanted to make about common denominators among mass shooters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all well aware of I mean, there's school shootings all the time, but we all remember the Elliot Rodger situation down there in San Bernardino a few years back. We can go as far back as Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the Columbine boys out there in Littleton, Colorado. Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hooks elementary school shooter. Sung-Wee Cho, the Virginia Tech shooter. Andreas Lubitz, the Germanwings pilot who killed himself and 150 other passengers. I think it was on flight 9525. The common denominator in terms of all male mass shooters, mass murderers, is that they are not good with women. And just like Rollo said, it's the term that he coined, terminal beta. That's how this works. And I know it seems simple, but you take the average man. If the average man is pretty good with women, right? He gets regular pussy. He might not be fucking the baddest bitches out there, but if he is getting regular sex from a few people, he's not thinking about killing himself or other people. He doesn't have suicidal or homicidal ideation. It just doesn't work that way. I said all that to say that game saves lives. We catch all kinds of heat for feminists and white knights and beta bitch boys. Well, you know, you guys are exploiting women, this and that and the other. You want to know something? Exploiting women is what we do. They have put themselves in that position. Again, men who are really, really good with women, even halfway decent with women, aren't trying to hurt anybody. They're just not trying to do that. Another point I wanted to make is that the media almost never points out the role. They never point out the woman's role in the demise of a man. No, this doesn't mean that Nicholas Cruz's ex-girlfriend is indirectly responsible for his mass murder. But when they go back and they take a look at this, just like Rollo had pointed out earlier, when he was telling people to Google Nicholas Cruz's ex-girlfriend, we were talking about this off the air, guys. Scott Peterson, right? Scott Peterson he's as guilty as sin, but men don't abuse or hit or kill women for just no reason. There are exceptions to the rule, and those guys are the Machiavellian, psychologically disturbed. They're sadistic. They just like to abuse women because that's just what they do. But Chris Brown, but Rihanna wasn't making pancakes in her Sunday dress when Chris Brown kicked her ass. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't work that way with regards to a man just snapping. Now, Nicholas Cruz was a ticking time bomb. Listen, his dad died when he was younger. He was diagnosed with autism, and then he lost his girl. And it would seem that guys like us would say, well, hey, you know what? You know, the lack of a father figure is the least of his worries, but that's just it. The media just glosses over the fact that there was no strong male role model in this kid's life. What else? Listen, in a feminist entrenched society, what else did you think was going to happen? And I forget who said it. It might have been I.M. or Rollo or even Roosh, but the basic premise of feminism is removing all restraints from female sexuality while limiting male sexuality. At some point, it's going to reach critical mass, right? And listen, mass shootings have been going on for a while, but almost seemingly overnight, they're happening every other month. Some kid or some guy is just unhappy with himself, unhappy with his life because he's not good with women. And again, the media just glosses over it, but then they say things like, well, he was raised by a single mom as a sympathy ploy. So as far as Nicholas Cruz is concerned, yeah, he's gonna, burn. I think they have the death penalty down there in Florida, or I'm whatever. I don't know whatever's gonna happen to him, but I think it's worth noting that again, game saves lives. You have to learn how to deal with women. You have to learn how to sleep with women. And this all might seem very superficial, but that's the truth. Nicholas Cruz was not good with women. This kid had one itis for a woman who then broke up with him. So what did he do to deal with it? He went and shot up a fucking school, and now he has ended effectively 18 lives, including his own.
Yeah, I'm going to cut in there too, because that's exactly what we ended the Peterson podcast on, when we were showing him talking to Kathy Newman, and he was using games.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the same thing. He's doing pressure fips, amuse mastery, that kind of thing. Like, it's not about picking up women. It's a life skill. It's, I guess you can almost call it, what do they call that? EQ, or social aptitude?
Yeah,
something like that.
It's just the way that we framed it, but these things are running in parallel, and you're right. You're just kind of showing that the stakes can go as high as you want to take them.
Before we go any further, let's get Carl in on this. I think he had something you wanted to add earlier on Ryan's point. Carl, are you there?
Well, I've added to that point now. So, the first thing is we're dealing with the first generation after the destruction of the nuclear family. So you have men raised by women, and they usually either turn out as complete soy or extreme caricatures of masculinity, like you see in gang culture. Then you have women who are raised by men who end up as tomboys, epic sluts, or both. Now, historically, men would be raised by not just their father, they would have uncles, they would have grandfathers, and everyone around them historically. But as we become totally cut off from our family, there's no tribe anymore. So people are left to their own devices. And we see people either formulating their own tribe, which is gang culture in inner cities, or motorcycle gangs, or joining the military. You find the tribe that suits you, and that can go either way, good or bad. And then you have these guys like Harris and Klebold are the best example, because they attack their own tribe. They're basically telling them, we should have a higher position within the tribe. And they usually tried for years to get that position. And when their idea of their own value is not justified by the group, they decide, okay, I'm going to destroy the tribe and I'm going to make my own.
Carl, would you say that the collapse or the fall of the nuclear family has also, it sounds like what you're saying is the fall of the nuclear family has happened in parallel with the collapse of local communities, whether it's extended family or other, like Ryan was talking about earlier too, like a male influence. Are those two occurring? Have they occurred at the same time, you think?
Well, I think it's coincidental. I think one leads to the other. That you start from, once you go from an agrarian society to an industrial society, people move apart. They no longer live in close family groups. And then you get cities where you can live for your entire life and not know who lives next door to you.
Yeah.
And that creates a way that it becomes easier to depersonalize someone who you have no fucking clue about.
And then, like Rola's saying here in the chat, you add in, autism to that, or Asperger's syndrome, and then one-itis, and then feminism, you get this crazy shit.
Well, I think it's so easy to, bring in mental illness, because if you read through the logs of mass shooters, it's like reading a diagnostic statistics manual, because everyone has something. But I think the rates at which we're diagnosing mental illness is just off the top. 21.8% of American women can be diagnosed with mental problems within a year. That means you have a higher chance of hitting of fucking crazy than you have of shooting yourself on the first try during Russian roulette.
And that's excluding alcoholism and substance abuse, right?
Yeah, that's just, and that's just the people who can be diagnosed. I mean, there are a lot of people who are
diagnosed, and that is just an excuse. for poor socialization too. That's the other point. It could just be society's fucked. It's not that people are mentally ill. It's just that if you can't teach somebody how to be social, they're going to be antisocial.
I agree with you, Ryan. I think feminism, specifically feminism, has almost turned boys into social retards. Like when we're kids, when we're little boys, we have this natural instinct. We just do what we want. We have all this energy. We want to talk to anyone and everyone. But as soon as a kid shows a little extra energy, and I'm using air quotes for those of you guys who are listening and not watching, just like I am said earlier, then they want to pump them up full of Ritalin and tap down his natural instinct to be a man. They don't know how to exist in the masculine. And then and then when they go undiagnosed and unmedicated, I guess correctly medicated, and then you catch one-itis, and then your one-itis ends up dating somebody else, you've got a gun. Of course this was going to happen. Of course.
Setting them up for failure and then being surprised when they fail.
That's what I'm saying.
Like blaming them for it.
like there are all sorts of women and men out here saying, "Oh, how could this happen?" Are you kidding me? Like it's like the writing has been on the wall for the last 50 something years. Eventually it was going to come to this. It's an inevitable conclusion.
Let's just the way our society's. Let's just pause on that, Donovan. This has been the writing. I agree with you. This has been the writing on the wall for 50 fucking years.
Yes.
Can you just kind of reiterate that for a second?
Yeah. Since the advent of feminism, and I said it before and I'll say it again, among other things, feminism frees women and it imprisons men. Like we are taught, like this whole bullshit hashtag Me Too movement. So basically, if you've worked in an office for the last 30 years and said hello to the secretary, you are subject to a sexual harassment lawsuit. Like men are now afraid to even talk to women. Men have to talk to women. This is what we are designed to do. And what feminism does with both men and women, it has a more adverse side effect with men than women because men, we have testosterone, more deadly consequences. But feminism literally programs women to do and be what they are not programmed to do and be. It's the same thing with men. Feminism teaches men you have to be nice to girls, or basically you have to eat the bullshit and like the taste. So we got men trying to be women and women trying to be men. Like I said before, this is 5 decades in the making. This, again, when I heard about this whole Nicholas Cruz shooting, like I think we're numb to it at this point. Like we don't even say, oh my God, like we remember Columbine. That was life altering, but now it happens every other week. And it's because of feminism.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting too that everything other than these issues gets the blame. So it's like guns get the blame, but gun ownership has gone down in recent decades, percentage-wise in the U.S. So it's like, why is all this? What is going on? Like, what was different in the 1960s versus now?
Well, listen, even if every home in America owned a gun, this was going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The only difference is the scale. How big of a body count is attached, because guns are more effective than knives because you get tired of stabbing after a couple minutes.
In China, I think
I don't mean to make light of it, but yeah.
Well, in China, I think there was a recent like mass stabbing where a couple dozen people died or something. That happened.
That's like 20 people. I remember that.
Yeah, that was recent. This is recent though. That's happened before as well. So it's like, or you run over someone with a truck. Like there's many ways to go crazy and kill people.
Oh yeah, that's
your side of the pond, single motherhood. I mean, Imagine if all these guys had dads to taught them how to shoot. The body count would be much higher.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. I don't even want to think about that.
Well, I was gonna say is hold that thought for a second.
Went there.
I think a lot of what gets blamed, when it comes to shootings like this, the first thing we want to talk about is guns. The next thing we want to talk about is the mental state of that kid. And then the next thing that we go on to now is we talk about masculinity, and we talk about the state of masculinity and how this came to be. And I think that since the Las Vegas shooting, I'm seeing this a lot more, and I've even wrote a post about this, how the narrative has shifted now. The narrative is no longer toxic masculinity or qualifying a particular type of masculinity. Now it is all masculinity is toxic. And that was the first thing I predicted would happen after this. And sure enough, if you look at the tweets for, I guess he's a comedian, Michael Ian Black.
Yeah, the New York Times Post.
Yeah, and so and he had a spot in there, and I think it's actually it's ridiculous what this guy's talking about, because he's believing in this a social convention and these feminist tropes that have been going on for at least the 50 years that Donovan was just talking about. And we want to think that a shooting like this happens because we're teaching our boys toxic masculinity. We're teaching our boys to grab a gun and solve a problem with the gun. And it's the complete opposite of what we're talking about right here, where it's suddenly it's men's fault. It's men's fault because there's not enough, strong men to teach the kid what's right and what's wrong. But yet we're going to bring up our boys as if they're not good humans. It's no longer boys will be boys. It's boys will be good humans. And that's what we saw during the Women's March.
And so it's erase masculinity and erase the man, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's remove the man. And so now that we've removed the man and we have this, this incident or these shootings now we want to go back and say it's men's fault. So fathers are superfluous up until the point where we need somebody to blame for the actions of some kid who is really the product of, an acculturation that has been completely feminine primary. It's been completely
monster.
Yeah, exactly. That is the monster that feminism and this, a feminine primary social order has created. Exactly. That's the monster that they built.
Yeah, that fucking guy. I remember that tweet. That was absolutely ridiculous. And I'm reading it, and I looked at this guy. I'm like, get fucked. You guys had 3 goddamn generations to sort men out with this new fucking vision you got, and they fucked it up every step of the way. So fucking step aside. We got it from here. Nobody else is handling it. So that's where basically the late Gen Xers and that, we'll handle it from here, guys. Just sit down.
Carl, do you want to add on this real quick? And then Donovan will hit you next.
Yeah, I was just thinking about masculine role models, because who does the current generation have, really? I mean, their idea of the masculine man are the guys from action movies or the guys they play in Gears of War. And what do those guys do? They solve all their problems by firing huge guns at different people. I mean, look at Rambo back in the 80s. You have a guy shooting down Soviet attack helicopters without a shirt on, using a bow and arrow. I mean, you don't get more masculine caricature than that.
Fun fact, he was working with Al-Qaeda in that movie. That's a mind blow.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Mujahideen fighting those. Who do you think? Yeah, those are Al-Qaeda, man.
Jesus.
I just fucked Rambo forever.
Jesus fucking Christ. Rambo's a terrorist. This just in.
Fucking shit.
Well, all I'm saying is, if your only masculine role model is Hulk fucking Hogan, I'm not surprised if your approach to conflict resolution is a boot to the face and a big leg drop.
Donovan, did you want to add in something here? I think you had something in the chat you want to get on.
Yeah. What I was going to talk about, just to add to Rolo's point quickly, is that boys are taught that they're inherently flawed. From birth, we're taught that we're taught that we have to serve women, right? And if they don't fall in line with the feminist imperative, that's when they're that's I guess when they're in essence punished. But the point I wanted to make was that it was something I talked about earlier. The media never points out the role in the demise of a man. They always the role of a woman. They always point out, just like you guys said, oh, it's toxic masculinity and boys this and no. We need to look further, and there's no better case than Aaron Hernandez. We all remember him, tight end for the New England Patriots, killed Odin Lloyd, and probably killed a couple of people in Boston, but he got off on that. What a lot of people don't realize is when you go to the Sports, I forget what website this is on. It's called The Gangster in the Huddle. Okay. And it talks about the life and times of Aaron Hernandez. Well, Aaron Hernandez's mother started cheating on their father with someone else. Not only that, she was running an illegal gambling ring in their house. Then when Aaron Hernandez's father died on the operating table, she then went and married the man that she was cheating on the father with. And in that article, it points out that Aaron was broken at that point. So when Hernandez gets in trouble at the University of Florida, he kills Odin Lloyd, probably killed a couple of other people, and killed himself. We all think to ourselves, oh my God, what happened? Where did he go wrong? Where he went wrong is that his mother fucked him over. Sure, there were other factors at place, but again, the media never points out the female responsibility in these particular situations. They even tried to glorify the fact that Nicholas Cruz was raised by a single mother. They said he went out and killed a bunch of people despite being raised by a single mother, as if to say that being raised by a single mother is some sort of advantage. That is fucking ludicrous.
Yeah, it's from my understanding, single motherhood is the #1 all-cause factor or influence for like a lifetime of poverty, crime, violence, prison time, all that stuff.
You know what? I can guarantee you're the first person who's ever said that on air, because you turn on the news, you turn on TV, they're not going to tell you that.
No, 100. Yeah, you're right.
Well,
100%.
I would say corollary. We don't know for sure it's the cause, but it's definitely correlated. So
yeah, it's the highest.
Just
Yeah, single
you're in that situation. Yeah, it's set up for failure, like I was saying before.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, I want to pause real quick. We got our first super chat money today. Whole $5 from Rob Cruz. He says supporting as a military law enforcement member, this topic is crucial. I also want to point out that, like we mentioned briefly before the show started, any and all super chats that come in live today on this show, I'm going to donate after the show ends to Jack Murphy with everything he has going on right now. I don't know if anyone could speak to what exactly he's going through better than I could, maybe Rollo. But 100%, whatever comes in today, I'm just going to send to his fund.
Yeah, he's going through it. He's going through a real tough time right now, and I wasn't even really made aware of the gravity of his situation up until like yesterday or the day before. I knew he was in some tough shit, but I didn't realize that he was, being ostracized from his little league,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
his stuff, and and his kids and everything. I think it's very important. I mean, you can say what you want to about Jack and his political, side of things. I think one of the big, I think he put out a post or something that's very similar to what Roosh had put out, sort of a thought experiment about like, I don't know if you know about Roosh, but Roosh was talking about how rape ought to be made legal on private property to dissuade women from going home with men that they don't know. And it was really basically a thought experiment, and pretty much that's what Jack they're quoting Jack for, completely out of context. And it's a group of SJWs right now who are just basically running him up the flagpole, trying to get him fired, trying to basically destroy his life. They will do anything they can to basically kill the man.
He's also on the school board, I think, where he's at too, right?
Yes.
They're suspended from that right now too.
Yeah, and they're totally trying to make him out to look like he's this alt-right white supremacist, neo-Nazi, and because he was a soft target, he was. I will say this: he was easy to hit, and they saw that and they went after that. And right now he's got a legal defense fund of some sort, and I think he's trying to put together some money to fight. I think he's going to get a defamation lawsuit or a libel lawsuit, something like that.
Okay. We got another super chat for him now too. Another one someone else pitched in. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What we should do is tap into Hulk Hogan, because his fight against Gawker is what Jack needs to do right now, and leg drop them.
There you go. DDT.
Hulkamania, brother.
Donovan, you want to hop in? I know you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah, real quick. Rolla said something about the alt-right. The red pill is now being blended in by the media as the alt-right. Okay. So a lot of times when people say the red pill, they think that we're all alt-right, extremist, this and that and the other. And I'll tell you what, there was a TV show on called American Horror Story Cult. And I actually tweeted this out. I think I tagged Rollo in it. Definitely tagged IM in it. And it's about this kid who he starts this cult, and he's this alt-right extremist. Well, on his laptop computer in his past, they were doing like a past dialogue section. He had up the red pill Reddit. Okay, this guy is clearly pro Donald Trump, pro alt-right, and so now what the media is trying to do is they're trying to marginalize what we're trying to do here by putting us in with the alt-right. Do we have some alt-right beliefs in the red pill? I'm sure we probably do, but what they are doing is they are trying to marginalize us by saying the red pill and the alt-right are one and the same, and I think that's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to the redefining of what is red pill and what is not. And to me, it's always been, you can watch my 21 convention talks about this, but to me, red pill has always been about intersexual dynamics. And if it's something else that comes along with that, like I said, I only ever do politics or religion or social issues on my site if they have a crossover into intersexual dynamics. So you'll never see me. I like Royce and I like Hartiste or whoever it is right now. I love them to death when it comes to their intersexual dynamics, but I always have to grit my teeth whenever they go into race or they go into politics or whatever, because that's never been what I've been about. And I think it's also to say that from my perspective, the red pill is a praxeology, not an ideology. And there's a distinction that needs to be made between those two, because I've been locking horns with guys about this recently. Praxeology is an objective, I call it a loose science, but it's an objective, loose science where we're aggregating the experiences and the experiences and the advice of guys and making a collective, point to, just us right here. This is a red pill to me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how do you put together an engine? Well, you do this and this.
I'm not saying that, guys don't have an ideology when it comes to the red pill, but I'm saying a red pill in the form that I have always been familiar with is always about intersexual dynamics. And so when you get people like when you get MGTOWs or you get, God forbid, the MRAs or cutesy little Cassie J and, red pill movies. And everybody wants to be called the red pill right now because all they're saying is that it's the truth that you are realizing now that you've been cut away from the blue pill. The blue pill is whatever they disagreed with, and the red pill is whatever they happen to agree with. And I'm of the opinion that it needs to be, amoral, areligious, apolitical. It needs to be as objective as it can possibly, as we can possibly muster, so that we can keep. I don't want to say that we're going to keep this as pure as it possibly can. No, ideology is going to find its way into the red pill, in certain ways. But I think that we need to strive to keep it as objective a loose science or objective praxeology as we can possibly make it.
And focus on its origins.
Right.
Yep. Ryan, let's get you in next. You had something you wanted to hop in here with Vox Day?
Yeah, just to lead in with that, like you're right, it's praxeology, it's auto mechanics. How do you put together an engine? How do you pick up a girl? How do you handle yourself socially? And it's funny, tying this into the Jack Murphy incident, is that Vox Day, who is a hardcore alt-righter as far as I know, has noticed that this happens so often that he was actually able to write a book called Social Justice Warriors Always Lie. I'm not sure if I'm plugging it or not, but I think it's a fascinating read. And it's exactly what's happening to Jack Murphy is almost step by step brought up. The same thing with what was that scientist's name? The one who wore the anime shirt when he landed asteroid.
Yes, I remember that. He had to apologize and all that.
He was basically the equivalent of a scientist shooting a bullet with another bullet, and then he had to cry on TV because she had a bikini on his t-shirt.
Unfucking believable, man. Unbelievable.
Here, and people wanted me to sound extra Canadian, so here's a Canadian thing I can tell you, but just get fucked, bud. Yeah, but it's the same thing. It's a great book for it because it shows. I think was it Tim Hunt, the guy who said girls weren't cut out for science as a joke, and they did the same thing to him. Same thing to this guy. It's Robert Fisher, the guy who started the red pill. It's almost a script, and it's something. I would suggest if anybody has any amount of and I'll use the two pseudo anonymous people we have in this chat. Anybody who has any amount of privacy concerns with discussing intermale dynamics, I think it behooves you to read and prepare yourself for these kind of situations. And final point, Hulk Hogan is actually the fix to it too. What he did with Gawker, I think, is a great roadmap, and Jack Murphy should follow his masculine role model of Hulkamania.
Yeah, complete with the shirt.
Let's get IM in next. A little man, you want to hop in?
Yeah, shit's crazy, man. That's what I've got to say. We live in a time of chaos. Like, why do you? I'm going to take this way out of the immediate and obvious theme and context of everything that's being said. Why do you think Peterson saying simple things like "tidy your room" is so successful? Like why do you think that is? If you go up to a guy and you say "tidy your room," he's probably going to look at you like, fuck's wrong with you? Why are you telling me to tidy my room? Or if he's soy, he'll be like, my room's already tidy. You're not gonna make a lot of money telling dudes to tidy their room, right? So I know I'm kind of being an asshole because obviously there's more to Peterson than tidy your room. But like that's like his main slogan, and his secondary slogan is an elaborate metaphor that
The lobsters, right?
Yeah, the lobsters. It's to do with the serotonin of lobsters and how we are like our evolutionary path diverged from lobsters like hundreds of millions of years ago or something. Like, yeah, you know, like this. Like, that's the secondary slogan, but his primary slogan is tidy your fucking room, right? Because like most people can get behind that, whether your room's tidy or not. You can get behind the slogan tidy your room. Now, why is this slogan so, and by extension, Peterson so popular? Because people have too much chaos in their life, too much chaos, right? They're not on top of their shit. So if you're not on top of your shit, and by the way, everybody wants to be on top of their shit. All men want to be on top of their shit, whether they are on top of their shit or they're not on top of their shit. They want to be on top of their shit. So why is this so appealing? He's in like a high IQ manner. He's saying you have too much chaos in your life and you need more order in your life. Introduce order into your life. Now, I know I've gone on a massive digression, but I think this is important. And
no, this is totally in the field, man, 100%.
And I can link it back. All these young guys who are like shooting up schools and shit and going crazy. Do you think they have order in their lives? Do you like, you know, they don't have male role models of any kind, whether it's a decent male teacher, a father, an uncle, or even a friend who is like 4 or 5 years older than them, right? Like it's not unnatural for like a 14-year-old guy to be friends with an 18-year-old guy. You know, people have fucked up minds these days. They think, oh, that's kind of gay. No, it's not gay. It's not gay at all. That shit's normal. That's happened all throughout history. If you look at like the fucking ranks of military forces throughout history, they would have had like fucking guys who are like on the precipice of being a child soldier. So they're not a child, right? They're like teenagers, they're like 14 or 15, right? And then they have some like high IQ commander who's a little bit savage. He's like 18 or fucking 19, leading their regiment. That's not fucking gay, right? That's there's a rapport there. There's a rapport there. And these days, that rapport in any sense, whether it's within the family, within a corporations do not give a shit about you, by the way. Like everybody knows this, but I feel it must be stipulated. Corporation, like the thing I like about mom and pop businesses, even though they're less economically efficient and do not obey the market, is that they love their employees more. They love them.
Right.
They treat them like human beings. Like if you have a mom and pop business, yeah, whoever you employ, like maybe they're not the most efficient person in the world, but you treat them like a human being. You see them, you identify them, you think this. Yeah. I know this person, right? You're not like super detached from them. You're not like you're not like 5 degrees attached from them. There's not like them, a supervisor, a department manager, a regional manager, an area manager, a CEO, and then you. You don't have all these like degrees of separation via hierarchy between that person and you. You're the owner, and you're more in touch with the people you employ, which means you humanize them more. The more degrees of separation there are between the owner / CEO and the employees, the more you dehumanize them and just see them as conduits of profit generation. And I'm not trying to sound communist or Bolshevik or socialist, by the way, because I realize anyone who's listening to this may think that, and I am completely against communism and socialism in all its senses, whether it's economic or gender-based, which is feminism, or racial-based, which is the shit that's going down in South Africa, because in South Africa, whites are 8% of the population, and they're just like, get the fuck out of here. We're going to take all your shit, and we're just going to give it to people who are less capable and poorer than you. And this happened in the Soviet Union as well. All the higher IQ people in the Soviet Union who were farming, they were just like, fuck you, you're the bourgeoisie, you're rich. We're going to take your shit and we're going to give it to people who cannot use this land. I know I'm digressing, but I'm making a point here. We're going to take your land and we're going to give it to people who are less capable than you, because that's more egalitarian and more ethical. And what happened to the USSR? Used to be a superpower, isn't a superpower anymore.
Doesn't exist anymore.
Right, no, it doesn't exist anymore. But you know Ukraine, right? That like what we think of as Ukraine now was the USSR. And if you think of the USSR, what was it synonymous with? Russia, right? Russia's current borders are not as extensive as its previous borders when it was a superpower, when it was known as the Soviet Union. When it was known as the Soviet Union, basically everywhere, including Poland and east of Poland, all those geographical regions were basically all Russia. They were all the Soviet Union. And this includes Ukraine. In the Ukraine, now they make an estimate. They don't have extremely accurate numbers, but somewhere between 2.5 and 12.5 million people. And they don't have an accurate number. And 2.5 million is the floor. 2.5 to 12.5 million people in Eastern Europe died because of famine, because of genocide. And do you know how that was caused? Under communism. And let me be more specific. And do you know why this happened under communism? Because the highly effective farmers who had more money than everyone else and were too privileged.
Let's pause for a second and let's get Carl in on this. He had a point he wanted to add on yours. Carl, are you there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that there are certain things men are just kind of supposed to know, and this is one of the things we observe with game. Women want a man who just gets it,
right?
And other men expect a man to just behave in a certain way. But these young guys, they're living in a state of chaos where no one's teaching them simple things like clean your fucking room, lift weights, make sure your checkbook is balanced, don't do dumb things. And so Peterson, when he comes in there and he tells them clean your fucking room, that resonates with him, because no one's ever told him that maybe your house shouldn't be in total disarray. Because these guys have been pushed towards being cogs in a big machine that just teaches them the bare minimum of what they need to know. Show up at work, do your job, go home, get drunk, watch sports, get up the next morning and go back to work. And no one's told them how to be men. And this is where we get a market for the manosphere. I mean,
Carl,
we're sitting here
for a second. Would you say that men are basically given the skills today and taught how to be good slaves, and that's it? Because that seems to be what you're kind of pointing out.
Yeah, we're told exactly what you need to do to work a 9 to 5, and barely that. We're not told. Well, think about the tribe again. If you're a tribe of 40 people in a land where you're fighting other tribes constantly, you need every man to be on his fucking game. Because if you have one weak dude who only knows how to gather berries, he's not going to be much help when the other guys show up with spears. Now we want men to have the minimum amount of knowledge they need to do their job, but not so much knowledge that they realize that, hey, we're going to work for 45 years, then we're going to retire, then we're going to be miserable until we're dead, we're going to be married to the same woman, we're going to get divorced, we're going to never see our kids, we're going to pay child support and alimony and not have any money left, and then we're going to die. And that's just a cog in a machine. It's not a real life that has value.
Before we continue on, I did want to point out we got another super chat from SPI Latino. Said just because the law says that these men are guilty, like Jack Murphy, doesn't mean, well, not the law in that case, but I think this is what he's referring to, doesn't mean it's right or actually true. Everyone forgets to add agency to the equation. With that said, did someone else want to hop in here? I think Donovan looks like he wanted to hop in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick point about what Ian was talking about. I read a book a while back called Outliers. It's by Malcolm Gladwell. And there's a concept in there that he talks about. It's called the power. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I would highly recommend reading it. It's unbelievable. Anyway, there's a concept in there he talks about called the power distance index, and I think that's what IM was referring to when he was comparing mom and shop businesses to the big corporations. Mom and shop businesses are the United States of America, in that the power distance index is very narrow comparatively to a place like, say, Cuba. Or other communist countries. I just wanted to jump in there and maybe give a name to what he was talking about.
You do not want to live in Cuba. Cubans don't want to live in.
No.
Why do you think Miami is Cuban? Cubans
Shit.
don't want to live. Cubans don't want to live in Cuba, man.
Dude, listen, man. I say this all the time. When we talk about illegal immigration and this and that and the other, whatever your stances are, that's fine. But if I'm a Mexican and I'm living in Mexico, right?
All right,
dude, I'm sneaking across that border every goddamn chance I get, bro. You better fucking believe it.
Donovan, let's perform a thought experiment for a second here.
Uh-oh.
I'm not going to get too complex. All I will say is, if I'm a Mexican, I will do everything I can to enter America.
Hell yeah,
dude! And why would I do that? For a start, you're taunting me because you have a state called New Mexico, and I live in Mexico. Right?
Wow.
Right. So everyone thinks new is better, right? So I'm just in the normal place, and you have the new place literally on the other side of the border.
There you go.
The one.
Are you moving to New York then, or
well?
Is old York?
Good.
As a British guy, I actually have more. It's harder for me as a high IQ, high earning British man to move to the US and give my intelligence and economic productivity to your nation than a fucking 80 IQ Mexican who wants to go mow your garden in one of the southern states. It's hot, like, dude, seriously, they make it easier for Mexicans to move into your country than me. Like if I want to move to the US, like, I'm not gonna. I'm either not going to marry an American woman, and I know you all have opinions on that already, as I say it. Oh, Donovan looks like he's going to implode.
Don't get me started, dude. Don't get me started.
It is kind of astonishing that as a Brit, it's not easy for you to move to America. Like, our country literally came from your country, and now there's supposed to be some special relationship. Like, where the fuck is it? Why can't you come here?
I mean, historically there is, and if you analyze the United States, the northeast United States, where the Brits initially colonized and the Americans rebelled. I mean, this is the funny thing. These days, no one rebels over anything. But back then, people rebelled over a fucking tax. You know, like
a very small tax too.
Sure, right.
We're used to. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. They were like, "Fuck you, colonial assholes. Fuck your monarchy. We want our own thing."
Fucking lobster backs.
Right. No, honestly, I respect the revolutionary spirit. Right. I do respect it. But you've got to bear in mind is, even if you look at it now, like genetically, demographically, it's mostly constrained to the northeast region of the United States. Like, if you look at the northeast region of the United States, it's mostly European. It's mostly white. If you look at the southeast, like Atlanta and Georgia and all around, like around there, it's more black. If you look at Florida, it's kind of Latino. If you look at the southwest, it's Latino. Why is Florida Latino? Well, because of
because they're 90 miles away from Cuba.
Yeah, Miami.
Right. So Florida is basically because of the Cubans, right? And there's an immigration policy in place that said you can come here. Like if you arrive on US,
you can make it.
You can stay here.
Right.
Whereas with California right now, there wasn't that policy, but the Democrats just basically betrayed the entire fucking nation. They're like, shit, we need more people who are gonna vote for us because we give them free stuff. So if Mexicans come here, we will invent the concept of sanctuary cities and just let them like that is that's
well, they consider themselves a sanctuary state.
But I have nothing against Mexicans, right? But that's completely traitorous. That's literally traitorous. And if you actually look at the Mexican Constitution, it is nothing like America. It is nothing like what's going on in California. In Mexico,
hardcore.
Dude, if someone from like Panama or Guatemala or Bolivia or what the fuck ever wants to move to Mexico, they are worse than ICE. If they find you in Mexico, they will like, you're not Mexican, and they will send you back to wherever the fuck you came from, right? But if you do that in California, you're a racist asshole. Like it's just bullshit, dude. And the Democrats, what's happened with the United States is it's become more and more Republican over time. The Democrats realize they're going to lose power if they do not import people from Latin America. And the only reason people from Latin America vote for the Democrats isn't because they're soy. it's because they want free stuff.
Yes, there is a vested interest. Yeah.
And the Democrats will give them free stuff, and the lower IQ people in society, right? And everyone thinks I'm an asshole, and I am an asshole.
Yes, you are. It's okay.
I'm not saying I'm not an asshole, but it doesn't.
You're in good company. Good company, dude.
That doesn't mean what I'm saying isn't true. The lowest IQ people in society, right? They're like, say, someone you would employ to, let's say, clean your house for you. Obviously, you want to trust them because you don't want them to steal your stuff, right? But those kind of people, those people you would employ, they are having a harder time in the United States finding employment, gainful employment, and not claiming welfare because people of a similar IQ level to them who are willing to work for less are coming in from another. Like, here's the thing: smart people like me, and I'm not the smartest person, by the way. I'm not trying to big myself up. There are way many people smarter than me, but someone of at least my intelligence level is not adversely affected by third world immigration. They're not displacing what I do because they cannot do what I do. But the poorest people in your society, like just think of Americans that you love and care for, right? Maybe they work in a factory, or they do cleaning, or they clean cars, or they work in a fast food place, or whatever they do, they're Americans, right? They will lose their jobs to people from the third world who, to be more specific, for the US, it's Latin America, predominantly Mexico, but you have non-Mexicans, right? They will lose their jobs to these people because they are not. So you have a minimum wage. So they will take the minimum wage, but then they will work off the record. So they will do additional hours that aren't charged. And
I feel like we're getting a bit too far off a tangent here, too far off topic of theme.
Okay.
Let's kind of back up and let's focus on some audience questions. We had one I posted in here. There's a few more in the chat as well. Rolo, if you want to start with this one. This was from Bears Ferry was the name that came by. Do feminists want to kill young men? Is there a conscious effort against men, or is it a byproduct of something else?
I get a lot. I actually get this question quite a bit. Do they want to kill men? I don't think that that's necessarily their end goal, but I mean, really, when we look at the suicide rates of men right now, 5 times the amount of women. No woman in her right mind is going to say, yes, I want to kill men. I do think that feminism has a vested interest in disenfranchising men and making them as weak as possible. I think that feminism has transitioned really from being a one message, I guess. And people keep saying is first wave feminism or second wave feminism, those were the good feminisms, and now we're in the new third or fourth wave feminism where it's bad. And I'm like, no. And there's a guy I follow, I can't remember his name right now, but he was making the argument that feminism has always been the same feminism as it was today as it was back in the day. And I said, well, hasn't feminism done some good things, like getting women the right to vote? And I'll let you guys debate as to whether that is a good idea or not. However, you also have to understand that it is men's complicity in that movement that has got women to where they are today. However, it's my opinion, and I think yours as well, Anthony, is that feminism today is a hate movement, and it is no longer feminism. It is now female supremacism. And we can see that in black and white whenever we see the next Women's March. We're going to see an anti-gun march pretty soon, I believe, on the second weekend of March. Yep. And you'll also see an Earth Day, global warming march in April. And we just recently saw the kids, walk out of school for gun reform, gun law reform. Oh, good. And if you look at all of these marches, these organized marches, they're all organized by the same people, the same organization. And really, it's the Women's March. It's the Future is Female people. And do I think that they're trying to kill guys? No, but I think men's deaths are sometimes the byproduct of that. We like I was just saying, it's 5 times the amount of men kill themselves as women. but yet we don't have marches against that. We don't have a special month dedicated to male suicide like we do for breast cancer.
We not only don't have marches, we don't have almost anything for that. We barely even have awareness of this fact.
Right.
I mean, us talking about it on the show is rare.
Yeah, well, it goes back to, once again, is that men are disposable, and people accept that. They accept that, men are supposed to sacrifice. We were talking about this last time when we were talking about Peterson. He gets off on this, life is suffering and men need to sacrifice, and we can get to a better place if men just sacrifice more. And that's one of the biggest problems I think I have with Peterson, is that it's all about men being disposable and not empowering themselves and not building themselves up and not pushing back on this. This morning I was talking talking about how, we need to push back on this. I don't know how you're going to do that. Like I said, I'm a praxeology guy, but how are you going to do that? What was that?
Like the end result, if we queen and country, you want to fight for the queen, like World War I, World War II, you can get disposable men and they'll be all for it. But the end result has to be something that's somewhat beneficial for at least a majority of us. I think that's where your problem is not that we're supposed to be disposable, but we're disposable for something that's not only not in our best interest, it's completely the opposite of that. It's actually against us.
Yeah, well, and
like, I'm not going to be disposable as a 17-year-old kid, so some girl can affirmative action, get a position in my company to show diversity, and then I have to sit on welfare, or I can't get welfare because I should be working. You get what I mean, though, right?
Right.
Sure.
Well, that's men being disposable, men killing themselves, men killing their families, men grabbing an AR-15 and killing 17 people. We're seeing a byproduct of this, and that's the thing that pisses me off the most when it comes to Michael Ian Black, or these people who rely on this old social contract narrative. It's all about how men are chauvinists and men are hitting boys and bullying boys into being tough guys, instead of embracing their femininity and embracing their sensitive sides and being more feminized. And it's like, this is bullshit. It's complete and utter provable bullshit. Because I can show you study after study about how we are teaching our boys to, as if they were defective girls, how we're, sedating our boys because they're acting like boys. I just put out an infographic about how few men are in education these days. Now they'll turn that around and say, well, it's men not stepping up and men not manning up and being the teachers. Well, yeah, but the thing is here's the other, why would they do that when they can be accused very easily of sexual harassment for anything whatsoever, for reprimanding a kid? Can you imagine a male teacher reprimanding a girl, a young girl, for a dress code violation or something like that? Imagine
people in the room, door wide open, maybe.
Yeah. It's not that men aren't manning up, and this is in general. It's not that they're not manning up. It's that the incentives are gone. Why would you do that? The risks are too high for them to step into that. You look at even Jack Murphy's situation right now. It is dangerous as a man to speak. It's dangerous for all of us to be on this channel right now talking about what we're talking about, because you could lose. I mean, I see why Carl and IM are anonymous, and I was very much anonymous for a very long time, because I had to be, and now I'm in a little bit more anti-fragile position right now, but I still got to be careful, because even though I don't have to worry about somebody firing me, I do have to worry about somebody making threats towards my daughter or my wife, or God knows, anybody in my family. So
even if you just got doxxed, your house could just get wrecked with like 500 pizza deliveries.
Exactly. And so it's not, or it could get swatted. It's not.
I was going to say, listen, the pizza delivery is not quite so bad. Just wanted to add that in.
Well, I was just going to say is that it is far more dangerous for men to quote unquote man up and to get into, push back against this kind of stuff. Then but it's an easy out. It's easy to say, well, they're just going to make an appeal to men's honor. We're going to say, well, if you were a real man, you would do X, Y, and Z. Well, X, Y, and Z serves your interests. So why am I going to listen to you? And why am I going to go and get into that? But maybe I'm going off track a little bit here. But I think that
I'll chip in here that Yeah, it is dangerous. I mean, I'm 29 years old and I'm effectively unemployable at this point. I'm anti-fragile and I've been that way my entire life, thankfully. But I'm 29 and I couldn't get a job at a real corporation of any kind if my life depended on it. For what? For speaking the truth and finding speakers who care to speak on these issues in public in whatever way you can? I mean, that's retarded. So yeah, it's just fucking nuts. Like, and I'm pretty well accomplished at my age and can't get a job or couldn't get one if they wanted to.
When we were doing the 21 convention, first thing I told you is that I was concerned about security above everything at the 21 convention, because I was worried that it was going to be from the outside. I was concerned that we were going to have protesters. I was concerned also that it was going to come from the inside. So you look at, and it's your anonymity is great to an extent, and that's one of the things I really hate when guys say, well, how come you don't show your real face? How come you don't, how come you don't put your name?
It's really fucking serious to show your face. Yeah. That's why.
No. But hold on. Let me cut you off there. The reason they say, why don't you show your face? It's they know why you're not showing your face, but it's almost like they're taunting you. They're asking you a loaded question. Dude, you know why the fuck I don't show my face. It's almost like someone, and I have a little bit of an anger problem. I can't stand it when people honk their horns at me within the safety of their cars. Dude, I am 6'1", I'm 230 pounds, and I got a temper problem. Dude, if you were not in your car, you would not be honking your horn at me. So when people say from afar, well, why don't you show your face? No, you know exactly why I don't show my face. Don't ask me loaded questions. Don't say shit you wouldn't normally say to somebody in their face. That's ridiculous. They know why you're not showing your face.
Carl, did you want to hop in on this? You had something you wanted to speak to a minute ago?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go through a little bit on the history of feminism. It was sold to men as a non-zero-sum game, like, oh, if we get the vote, if we get to work, that's better for us and it's better for you. But when you see it that way, a non-zero-sum game is where we both win. A zero-sum game is if I win, you lose, or vice versa. So if you start to look at it, okay, so custody. Women get custody, men don't get to see their kids. Who ends up paying out the alimony? Who loses most of their assets in a divorce? Who has it better in the dating market? 80% of the women are fucking the top 20% of the guys, and they're fucking miserable. So we have a situation where after 50, 60 years of being sold that, hey, we both win if we do this, women are more miserable than ever, and men are killing themselves at a higher rate than ever or going on shooting rampages.
Well, so at what point the top-end men are winning like a motherfucker.
Yeah, but the top-end men aren't going around killing people either.
Donovan, do you want to hop in on the question we had as well from the live audience?
As far as feminism is concerned,
we haven't. Hang on a second. The audience doesn't know what it is. Let me read it off.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
This guy named Shanks asked, "I have a question. If the bottom part of the male hierarchy is always going to lash out, how do we prevent that from turning into mass shootings? Given that we can't do away with the hierarchy."
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess I'll briefly answer that question and then talk about feminism. When only the top, 10 to 20% of men are fucking the bottom, or fucking 80% of the women, these are the kinds of things that happen. And I think spoke to this when we was talking about a polygamous society. The reason why a polygamous society wouldn't work is because there would be more men without wives, without love, than men who have those wives. There is nothing more dangerous than a sexually frustrated beta male, right? Elliot Rodger the list goes on and on. Say again?
Arab Spring.
That's
what started that too.
Even the Vegas shooter too, though.
Carlo
was talking about that when he was tweeting about it when it was happening. Yeah.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the way I see feminism to me is one giant shit test. And the guys who pass the shit test are the guys who have the success. Feminism is indirectly survival of the fittest. If you are a man and you can get past this feminist bullshit, if you can figure out who women really are, what women really are, and treat them as such, you will be rewarded with an abundance of riches and money, pussy, finances, etc., 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 etc. feminism, women think that this is what they want, but just like Carlos said earlier, nobody wins with feminism. Women are more miserable than they've ever been in their lives. Listen, as far as our society is concerned, the feminists have won. They literally have absolute power.
And
they can get
everything up along the way.
Listen, they can get any man fired just by saying that he raped me or he beat me or he sexually harassed me. And just like Carlos said earlier, they're getting custody 85% of the time. Marriage is a fucking joke. And the reason why women want to get married and men don't is because women have nothing to lose in a marriage. Men have everything to lose. Women don't bring shit to a marriage except for a pussy and a set of tits. Men bring everything else, but then we still end up losing half of our shit. This is why men are not getting married. To one more point here, feminism, they want all of the benefits of masculine agency without any of the costs. They want our help. They want our muscles. They want our ingenuity. They want everything that we have to offer without giving up the pussy. And it don't work that way. You're going to get all of the masculine agency from all the beta males, but that's not what women really want. They want the alpha males to help them out. And this is why they're not fucking the beta males and fucking the alphas. And when the betas finally get wind that, you know what I'm doing is not really working, let me cock my AR-15 and go shoot up a fucking school, because these women out here want they want to call me when they want something done, but when it comes time to pay the fucking piper, they don't want to do it.
I want to get into another question here we got from a super chat donation to Jack Murphy's legal fund. This is from Is Why Not? His question was, what do you guys think about herbivore men and low birth rate phenomena like in Japan? There's no feminism there, but also no masculinity either. Open to anyone. Rollo.
Well, I think Japan is a very interesting society because it's based on working. Like, people there work 24/7. They actually have their own word. I think it's karashi, which is a word for dying of a sudden heart attack or stroke while at work.
Oh my God.
And what happens there is, it used to be that you worked 24/7 so that you could get to the top of the dominance hierarchy. You'd be rewarded with wife, family, etc. What happens now is people realize that, hey, spending 20 fucking hours a day at a corporation, working until I have nothing left, and then suddenly dying, and then having my wife divorce me, what's the point of that? Who wants to spend 24 hours a day working? Nobody.
Right. It's incentives is what it is. You got to understand, if you look at the culture of Japan is insular. Okay. So they're very stuck in their ways. They're very, insular is the best word. Yeah. Well, the best way I can say is they're an insular society. Now, is feminism there? I would also argue that feminism in some way, shape, or form is in Japan. Now, I don't think that that's the cause of the hikori. I forget there's a word for the guys who are like the lost boys, the guys who put themselves into their apartments and they play video games and they jerk off the porn and they order pizza or whatever. Hikoro Mori or something like that. I can't remember. But
it's something fucked up. That's all.
Yeah, it's something fucked up.
Yeah.
But I mean, they've got a word for that as well too. But I think really what it is, I mean, we're talking about a culture that has gone from the age of the samurai and the Bushido code to boys dressing up like girls, or we have waifu now, or they've got a little pillow that they pretend is their wife, which is, I mean, you look at just how sad it is, but there is still that want. There's that want and that desire, that natural want for have that connection with the woman. But again, what Carl was just saying is that the incentives are gone. So it's like the society of the herbivorous men of Japan. It's like the society of MGTOWs, but if they didn't go MGTOW because they were pissed off at women like everybody likes to say they are. They did it because it was just simply the most pragmatic, practical way to solve a problem for them. And dealing with women, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze for them. And it wasn't because they hated women. They still want women. They still have waifus. They still have like little, they got these gadgets that are kind of like Siri or Alexa or something like that, like the digital helper kind of thing, but it turns into their wives for them. Like it's literally something that's supposed to be, a substitute for a wife. Like that movie, Her, starring Joaquin. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. And so when you look at that, the desire is still there, but the incentives aren't. And it's like the reward is like, it's more worth it for them to check out than it is for them to check in. So it's not like here where we have, I mean, I'm sure that there's some pushback and I'm sure there's some demasculinization that's going on. But I think that if you were to ask most of the women in Japan, would they like a positive, strong, masculine, dominant male, they'd probably love it. But those guys don't exist because those guys don't see a payoff. They don't see a cost to, a risk to cost benefit there. So I think that that's probably the difference from those guys. The guys who would qualify as MGTOW in Japan are not the same guys that would qualify as MGTOW here in the United States or in Europe or wherever else.
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Donovan, hang on. Let's switch to Ryan. He's got some important points on this that he was tweeting about the other day about Japan.
Yeah, so funny thing about Japan. Japan was a very masculine, warrior, homogenous culture. It was at the point, if I remember correctly, my story is like YouTube research level, but at the end, when they were starting the fire bombings, it was at the point where every man, woman, and child, now not just the guys, the women and the children, the elderly, were all mobilized for war to the point where they were ready to fight the American army with like bamboo sticks sharpened up. It essentially took a firebombing of 80% of the country, 2 nuclear bombs to, I can't think of a better word, but sterilize the population. So I don't think, it's not feminism created herbivore men, but it's essentially a neutering by a different mechanism. And so it took all that. They eventually had to say the emperor was no longer godlike and all the plans of the Marshall Plan and that. And so you put people in this situation where something essentially robs them of their masculinity. And of course, the only other outlet is just to waste away, I guess. Just sit there and wait to die. Hedonism, I want to say nihilism, but not in the sense that, as Nietzsche put it, where nihilism is killing your God so you can make your own God in your own image, but not getting that second half of that. So essentially just like despair or... So I would say that. So Japan didn't have feminism, and this goes back to that guy's question. They didn't have feminism, but they did have a giant neutering of the average male, I guess, if that's a good way of putting it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Carl, did you want to add on this too, or back to Rollo's point?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of work my way backwards here because both the herbivore men and the MGTOW are coming to the same conclusion. They're saying women are not worth it because the risks of it outweigh the benefits. And if we go back to it, I think that comes down to the fact that Rollo covers in Saving the Best and Betas in Waiting, which are 2 of my favorite essays of his, where he covers the fact that a beta male spends 20 to 30, maybe 40 years of his life building himself into the man society tells him he needs to be. He needs to get his degree, stable job, house, car, income, etc. And what he gets as a reward is starfish duty sex for a couple of years, couple of kids, a harsh divorce, and then paying child support for the rest of his life. And every guy has seen this play out in his social circle for at least 10, 15, 20 years now, maybe with their dads, their uncles, their friends. And at that point, you can only see other men get kicked in the balls so many times before you go, oh, fuck, I'm going to put on a cup here just to be safe.
Right. Well, I was going to add on to this real quick is that when we're talking about MGTOWs, we're talking about guys who think that the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Yeah, I think what you're right. It's the incentives that back that up right now. So I think what we're seeing right now with the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement,
yep,
we're looking at an even further polarization between men and women. And what is the height of fucking hubris and irony in all of this is the new mentor her hashtag.
Oh
from,
my god!
From I think it was Ariana Huffington.
Yep.
And it's like,
yeah, I think so.
We're going, hey, oops, sorry, we don't want you to be so afraid of working with us. We don't want you to, we don't want you to push you all the way away. We still need the beta guys to help us out with our computer problems and our, we got to get the printer to work,
right. And to move the boxes.
We don't
want us to be the CEO, yeah.
And we don't want the alpha guys to, be so scared of talking to us that, that they're not going to want to approach us and have sex with us. But now we're saying, and just goes back to the point I was just making, it's this man up or shut up dynamic. And so what it is now it's this shame, there's this masculine shame that says, if you don't mentor her, then you're not a man. Then it's making that appeal to that masculine sense of duty. So if you don't step up and man up and mentor her, then you're just a little scared little boy who Jack Donovan would say is all they have left is fear. Okay. And so now we're going to make it appeal to that fear. Yeah,
Rollo, I want to ask you, you mentioned gender relations a second ago, gender relations. Do you think we're seeing kind of the culmination of a collapse in gender relations between men and women at every age?
Oh, my bad.
I think we're approaching that. I don't necessarily think that we've reached that point right now. I think there's going to be even further polarization. And I think a lot of that goes back to what we started out talking about here, which is masculinity it's no longer toxic masculinity. It's masculinity is toxic. And that right there is one more manifestation of this polarization that happens between men and women. So we talk about polarization between political factions, and we understand that. We talk about, the distance between red and blue. And we talked about, Republicans and Democrats. And we say that we are more politically divided than we ever have been before. And also what we don't really acknowledge right now is we don't acknowledge that there is a divide between men and women. And the reason for that is because of the last 40 or 50 years of feminizing men and masculinizing women and putting women into a position of entitlement and expectations of an old social contract from men, but then also expectations that they're going to also abide by the new rules, which is female empowerment.
And so, for the guys who aren't familiar with your work, Rollo, when you say men and women, you mean that across every age demographic, every religious demographic, everything across the board.
Well, yeah, a lot of guys will tell me, well, that's not the way it is in my country. I come from a Muslim country where, the women are oppressed or, whatever. I would challenge guys to show me where those women are so oppressed that they're not getting education, that there's not some manifestation of the feminine imperative in those cultures. It's certainly not going to be like it is here in the good old USA, but I will guarantee you that even in those countries where women are classically oppressed, or even in Latin countries where men are expected to be men, I could show you example after example of how the feminine imperative still uses those. That's the thing about the feminine imperative. It is fluid in being able to redefine itself to work its own purposes in. People think that feminine imperative and feminism are just some new social movement that we've come into in the last, say, 100 years. I would argue the feminine imperative you can trace the feminine imperative all the way back to chivalry, all the way back even before that, where, if you ever read The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, he goes into how women actually, I think the quote was, men conquer worlds and women conquer men. And so the power behind the throne is always a woman. Behind every successful man, there's a woman. That's the trope. That's the meme that we always are taught. But yet, and when it comes to oppression, when it comes to women, not feeling like they have all the rights and all the equality that they want, that's when they'll fall back on that, rather than saying that, rather than recognizing that women are an underlying authority for men. So when I talk about the church, for instance, people say, well, isn't the church completely run by men? Isn't it always been a patriarchy within the church? Yeah, but not up until now. I'll tell you right now, it's women who are running the show, because women are the primary consumers. So they're the primary people who are going to show up and go to church, and drag their husbands along, and use his income as a tithe check. So who are pastors going to, pander to? It's going to be the women in the congregation. So progressively, we have seen this feminization and this assimilation of feminine imperative social values creeping into the church in so many different ways right now, that we're getting to the point where our faith and our doctrines are beginning to become defined by those feminine principles, or those feminized principles. So that's just one example. But getting back to the point here is that there is going to be even further and further polarization. So there's going to be guys who are going to see it, and they're going to get it, and they're going to push back against it. And then there's going to be the guys who are the allies, who are going to go along with that, because they think that that's their key to getting laid. That's their key to reproduction. That's their key to getting married.
The Vichy
And
males,
so they
basically.
go along. Yes, exactly. So you're seeing this polarization right now. And I think that is part of our social condition right now.
Okay. Donovan, did you want to hop in on this real quick?
Yeah, just a couple of quick points. First of all, to Rolo's point, listen, women have no religion. Women don't really believe in anything. Women believe, they follow whatever the strongest men believe. So whether you are a God-fearing man in the Baptist church or if you are an atheist, if you are a strong male who is influential, they will follow you. Whether you are Billy Graham or David fucking Koresh, it doesn't matter. That's been proven over time. But with regards to this hashtag Me Too movement there, what Ariana Huffington is the bullshit mentor her, women have realized that they have fucked up. Because the strongest, most powerful men are now afraid to work with them. Mike Pence, I think, now has an open door policy where he will not meet with a woman in a closed room at any time without someone else there. The only female that he will be alone with in one room is his wife. They've pushed it way too far. But the bottom line of feminism, and it sort of manifested itself into this hashtag Me Too movement, they want it both ways. They want to be able to use masculinity when it's convenient for them, but then turn it off when it's convenient for them. You cannot regulate masculinity. This is what feminism is trying to do. You can't turn masculinity on and off like a switch. You can't have an alpha male act like a beta when you want him to. This is what they want. My third point, somebody said in here, I think Rolo echoed him, said the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Well, that's what this ridiculous Dakamakura, the pillows that the Japanese men are marrying. Guys, it's not worth it anymore. It is, listen, man, like I fucked so many girls. I can tell you, man, it was great and it was fun and this and that and the other, but it's just not worth it. In order to just have sex with women, it's not worth the price. It's not worth the cost, the time, the energy, the everything that you have to learn and be just to sleep with women these days. It's not worth it. And this is why we now have this debate regarding sex dolls. Women call, and I don't have a sex doll, nor will I ever own one because I have no problem getting pussy. But the reason women the world over asking, well, why all of a sudden do men have to have sex dolls? Well, the reason they have to have sex dolls is because it's not worth it to pursue you guys anymore. Beta males who are incels, right? Involuntary celibates, they have realized that, okay, it is way too much trouble getting pussy from real women. Like, they've tried everything. It's not like, listen, 19 to 20-year-olds are not buying sex dolls. It's the 28 to 30-year-olds who have been in the sexual market for a decade plus, and they figured out, you know what? I'm not going to solve this, so fuck it. I'll just get a plastic, silicone, whatever. At least she's not fat. I don't have to buy her fucking drinks. She's not going to complain. I'll do that.
At least she won't divorce me and steal half my shit.
That's what I'm saying. This is why more guys are going towards sex dolls, because it's just, women are not worth it anymore.
Sex dolls don't gain weight.
No, they don't gain weight, right? You don't have to feed them. She doesn't complain. She's not going to cheat on you. I mean, dude, like, what's not to like, right?
100% loyal. 100% loyal.
And no, well, hold on. I don't want anybody on here talking about Donovan has a sex doll. No. I do not own a sex doll. I don't, listen, man. But what I'm saying is that I understand why men are now going the way of sex dolls, and we can rationalize it and laugh about it. But this is what the guys who are buying this stuff,
you know something really crazy is when you can have a sex doll and a live chick at the same time and call it like a 2.
Oh my God, yes.
Your first
2.5.
I got one thing to drop in here, and then it kind of comes back to what we were talking about last week. And I saw this video. I have no idea that it was such a controversy, but it was Jordan Peterson in one of his classroom situations where he was talking about the weaselly MGTOW guys and how MGTOW guys were trying to convince young men not to get married and to just swear them off of having to deal with women in any way, shape, or form. And first of all, he has this completely screwed up idea of what MGTOW is, because I think he would probably lump the red pill in with that as well. But I think one of the I guess it's the results or the reactions to this is that he is trying to get guys to not listen to MGTOW and to get back on the plantation and to get back into marriage, and it's like the complete role reversal, because if we don't, then all of Western civilization is going to collapse. So I think it's interesting when you look at the MGTOW side of things and what we've been talking about, and just verbalizing the fact that maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. And this is coming from a guy I've been married for 21 and a half years. I have a great marriage. I love my wife very much. And some of you guys have met her, but I'm going to tell you right now, the juice is not worth the squeeze, not by today's standards and not by the institution that marriage has become today.
Black Label Logic. Carl, you're up next.
Yeah, the first is the flippant comment I was originally going to make on Me Too, because they actually asked the Russian foreign minister, I believe, what he thought of Me Too. And his comment was, well, it's men's job to sexually harass women, and it's women's job to resist. Which is possibly one of the reasons why Russia is doing slightly better. And on the Jordan B. Peterson thing Rollo was touching on, I think it's very interesting that a man who's so much into the Bible is actually taking the role of the Pharaoh in Genesis. I'm just waiting until the wave hits the TradCons.
Yeah. Ryan, when you want to hop in, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you remember last podcast when I said I'm pretty sure that Jordan studied game? I fucking knew it. Somebody sent me a link, and he was talking about pickup artists. He called them pocket psychopaths or training psychopaths, something like that. Yeah. I fucking knew it. So he does know those skills, and when he was using those there, I can tell either psychology took from him or he took from psychology. And to tie back to your way original point about the school shootings and the guys having no outlet and eventually just lashing out, I would hate to say it, but the mystery method is probably the best way to stop a school shooting when you think about it. I mean, if you think about it, it's like a problem solution standpoint. Mystery is essentially able to stop school shootings. The same way that Hulk Hogan is able to stop vicious doxing.
Well, the real question I wanted to pose.
So what you're saying, Ryan, is Venusian arts, not AR-15s. It's like if you go into a gun store and ask for an AR-15, they give you a 3-week boot camp with mystery instead.
I guarantee you, had that kid learned some game and somebody had told him, don't worry about it, she's just a bitch, she's not worth it, there'd be 17 kids alive right now, and there'd be one kid with a wet dick. It sounds flippant, but you know I'm right.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like it's so far outside the mainstream to say that, but I think this is a very simple truth. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can even make it super personal. Like Anthony, we all know your story, the Medusa, that divorce and private marriage thing like there. Had you not learned game, I'm pretty sure that shit would have probably fucking wrecked you.
There's a lot of, yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of guys that would have been in a position with a BPD or with someone with a disorder that would go that route. I have no doubt. David Tien was one of the guys who now went public in a video. He was a speaker who also had a cluster B experience. He nearly killed himself. And given his purple pill status, I'm not surprised he almost killed himself.
Yeah, and so small point, a lot of the guys at the Married Red Pill, they want to know, like, I have sons, what do I do with this?
Oh yeah.
So I don't have kids myself, so I can't say to that, but I will say this. As a dad, I would say one of the best skills you can teach your kids is to have game, frame, and boundaries. I guarantee you those 3 things. Mm-hmm. Granted, if she takes your kids, you can't see them, but 2 weeks, that's still a 2-week window that you can work with there.
Hell yeah. You can teach them. Yeah.
Like that's the situation you're in. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change it. You make the best out of it. But yeah. Like mystery.
Rollo, do you want to comment? Oh, go ahead. Rollo, I was going to say, as a father, do you have any comments on this shooting, or the recent shooting in Parkland, just from that perspective? Kind of like if you and Hunter were on the show right now.
It's funny you should say that. Hunter and I actually just did a show over on Craig James's podcast about 2-3 weeks ago. Okay. As a father, it's hard for me to really relate with this kid because I have a daughter and she's been raised by a red pill. I mean, she's been raised by Rollo Tomasi. Okay. So, for me to say that, you know, my nephew is, you know, has been an alpha male since the day he was born. So, and we've always encouraged him to be that, and to, you know, sort of own his shit. So my nephew is really solid when it comes to that. So he's the only other kid that I know who I've, you know, raised from, you know, helped raise anyways, from a child to adulthood. But I think that what scares me the most is just the degree of, or the combination, I should say, of autism or Asperger's syndrome, and even as mildly as that is, or however we want to, you know, if we want to diagnose that as a problem or just a social retardation as a problem, you combine that with blue pill conditioning, and then you combine that with women raised, you know, what I call the village. You know, it takes a village to raise a kid. The village raising a boy to be a girl. You know, it's a point where we're at with transsexual boys wanting to become girls in much, much higher numbers than girls wanting to become boys. You know, we're at a point where we're going to, you know, introduce hormone blockers so that they don't have to actually become a boy. We also teach them now the complete opposite of what Michael Ian Black was talking about, where it's like we you know, raising a boy is just tantamount to bullying him until he's 18 years old. I think that when we think of the reverse of that, where we're teaching our boys to out-emote each other and to out-feel each other and to out-identify with women against each other, and you take all of that and you mix that together and you put it into a generation where these kids, these boys, have never known defeat, and women and girls are always better. They're the correct ones. If you do it like a girl, you're doing it the correct way. And we're to the point where we're going to sedate our boys for ADHD because, you know, they're not acting enough like sweet little innocent girls. And we're expecting our boys to be just as mature as girls, because girls mature quicker than boys, right? And so you take all of this and you mix it all together and you put it in a guy who is part of the trophy, you know, the participation trophy generation, and he just gets hammered flat by a girl. Yeah, how is he going to react to that? You know, he's got access to social media that I'm pretty sure nobody in this chat has had since they were, you know, born. You know, this kid's what, 17, 18 years old, so he was born into the communication era, you know, the internet era, and we're expecting him to, you know, to have some self-control and to have learned something that men should have been teaching him, and we can always blame it off on men, but it's a cocktail basically of conditions and circumstances that are going to lead to a mass shooting like this. But we don't want to call it that. We don't want to draw any attention to that. We want to say it's gun control, or we want to say it's toxic masculinity, or we're going to try, or it's because he was on antidepressants, and maybe that has something to do with it, but we're going to say he's crazy. So it's gun control, he's crazy, and toxic masculinity. Those are the three go-tos. And I guarantee you, after the next one of these that happens, and there will be another one, that's going to be the progress. It'll go from he was crazy, gun control, toxic masculinity.
I think that's the end game, is toxic masculinity. Eventually, toxic masculinity is going to be the scapegoat for everything that goes wrong in our society.
Well, let's hit on this point too. There's something I actually wrote down before we even started the call today that I want to ask all of you. Rollo, you can go first if you want. So from my understanding with this mass shooting, there was a long-term massive failure of government on every level, from the public school he went to with the administrators being, you know, tipped off about screwy behavior and stuff like that was, you know, potentially violent. Local law enforcement visited his house multiple times, multiple calls over the years. The state of Florida Child Protection Services, they got involved somehow, failed. The FBI failed. They were tipped off twice, a couple times, with reliable tips that included his real name. And then they came back and said they couldn't identify him. Like, it's
right. Like he said, I'm going to be a professional school shooter, and it said Nicholas Cruz. Yeah, like what the fuck is that?
So I want to ask you guys, how has feminism over the past 50 to 80, 100 years affected the bureaucracy in government, or how do you think it relates to this? Because this is an incredible failure of government on every level, from like super local in school, local, state, federal. How has feminism affected or increased bureaucracy in government through voting or anything else? Can you guys speak to that, or is that question making sense?
No, that makes all that. I've got a short, quick answer. Feminism has affected government in that women are taken care of around every corner. If a woman is a victim of domestic violence, there's a safe place. If she needs mental help, there's a safe place. The government does not seem interested in helping men or boys. Nicholas Cruz didn't fall. Listen, they say Nicholas Cruz fell through the cracks. There were no cracks for him to fall through. The government, this country, does not give less of a shit about about boys with those problems. That's what this comes down to. All the girl has to do is say, at 6 years old, I'm not happy. And all of a sudden now she's in therapy. She's in counseling. They do everything they can to coddle her and make sure that she doesn't turn out to be mentally fucked up, while telling her that it's empowering to be sexually open. So, but with boys, right? If a boy says he has a problem in school, or if there's something emotional that he's going through, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. There's no place for men to turn to. This is why the red pill is created, because there's no other place for men to turn to. If Nicholas Cruz had Googled, why do girls get over breakups so easily, or how do I sleep with beautiful women, I can promise you the school shooting wouldn't have happened, because he would have found the red pill at that point. But the main reason, the main influence that feminism has had that could have prevented this particular incident from happening is that the government at the state and the local level are so focused on women and what they can do to help him and their problems that men get left behind. And Nicholas Cruz, to me, is the physical manifestation of that failure.
Rollo, you have something?
That's part of the. Now we're talking about mental health issues. We're talking, like, I think that's also one of the, like we say, oh, well, he's crazy. Well, I think that, that there's been a push recently to emphasize mental health issues for these guys. But what they're not going to talk about is they're not going to talk about men being zeroed out. They're not going to talk about men having 5 times the rate of suicides as women. They're not going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about anything that will reflect as unflattering to the feminine imperative.
Right.
They're just not going to do that, because, that's why we're talking about guns. That's why we're talking, I should also point out here that for all of the miscommunication and for all of the warning signs that were there, they had now what it was, four cops were on the scene, and all of them just waited until it was over before they would go in guns blazing at all, because they didn't want to get shot. Right. They held out. We had warning after warning. We had, visits to the kid's house. We had all of this stuff going on with, these threats to the ex-girlfriend and the new boyfriend of the ex-girlfriend. We had all of this going on. But what happened after that? And if you look at this, I'm not buying it. But when you look at how quickly this, I want to call it the left, but these people who are who are the organizers of the march, who are organizing the women's march, who are going to be organizing the future marches here. Look how quickly they were ready to capitalize on this. It's almost, and I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat here, but I'm going to say, if I were a conspiracy theorist, I would say that they had this in mind and they knew something like this was going to happen. And I'm not saying they engineered this, but they were sure as shit ready for it when it happened. Right. And they knew that it was going to happen. And so what do they do? Suddenly CNN has a town hall meeting about this, where they're feeding these kids, pre-scripted questions and responses.
Well, fortunately, CNN's not known for feeding questions.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, exactly.
There's no way they would do that.
Champions of real news. Yeah.
Listen, to your point, Rollo, and I'll let you get back to it. Is it not amazing how quickly they were on the ground out there having these discussions with these kids in a room about the shooting? It's less than 24 hours later, and you've got David Muir sitting in a room full of teenagers talking about the experience. And I don't even know about the
bodies are still warm.
That's what I'm saying.
And it's like, and I don't know if this is true, because I'm just speculating here, but from what I've read, they've got a couple of kid actors who are like what are called crisis actors. Oh. And I don't know if that's been debunked yet or not, but I will say this: those kids were ready with talking points from the word go.
That's right.
And they knew this kid. Everybody on campus said, we knew this kid was dangerous. We knew if it was going to be anybody, it was going to be him. They said that literally. And, what did they want to do? They wanted to have a town hall meeting so they could get together and talk about gun control and talk shit about Trump and talk shit about anything except for the real reasons which were this kid was fucked up in the head and he broke up with his girlfriend, was the product of a blue pill conditioning all the way up to where he is. And we're just simply not going to talk about that because that would mean we would have to take some responsibility for women, for the feminine imperative. We have to do that. But
and as we all know, our society has no interest in placing any kind of responsibility or accountability on any person walking around with a vagina.
That's right. And ultimately, this kid is a child of feminism.
Right.
I think is at the end of the day what the hardcore, the core truth is. Yeah.
Yeah, single mom. Oh my God, he did this despite being raised by single mom. No,
I don't just mean that. Though. I mean just past 50 years, like you were saying before, Donovan and others. I mean, he's in an environment where these other factors took place and coalesced into actions. But at the end of the day, he's an American I live in Florida. I grew up in Florida. I didn't shoot up a fucking school.
Right.
I grew up a few hours from that kid was. No one from my high school shot the school up. Like, but it's getting worse.
But then we all act like we're surprised.
Rare.
Yeah. Carl, did you want to hop in? Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to go a bit back to your original question about feminism and government. Okay. Because if you look at democracy as a governing mechanism, the way we have it now, it's like the ultimate female way of doing things. Everything has to be decided and everyone has to agree in a group. But there's also no one who has to stand for the decision. If you have a king, you know that, okay, your word is law, but if you fuck up too much, people will march to your house, they will kill you, they will kill your family, and it'll be done. And that got me thinking about accountability, because if you look at it, there's no accountability in the public sector. You have the Rotherham case where they covered up for years that hundreds of girls were being groomed and raped. You had Cho at Virginia Tech, and pretty much every professor he had said, this guy is fucking nuts. You had the whole thing that they covered up in Germany with the refugee crisis. Yes. And my personal favorite, Jeffrey Dahmer, who has a guy drugged up in his house. He's stark naked. The guy manages to walks out, meets the police. Dahmer goes out to him and manages to convince the police that this guy who's bleeding and drugged out of his fucking gills, that's just a part of a sex game we were running back at my house. The cops let him take the guy back to his house and kills him. And I'm just asking, why is nobody getting fired here? Isn't there some kind of incompetency or problem here?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm tuning in like 15 different things, guys. Someone will hop on that?
Yeah, there's not. There's just not. Like there should be. But shit in one hand, wish in the other. See what fills first. And it makes sense. I don't want to say it's because of women coming into the workplace. It's a bunch of factors, but you're right. People have worked hard to make the systems that they're in lack the accountability because they want safety, they want security. And the byproduct of that is when these kind of situations happen, nobody gets blamed in the situations where we need accountability. Mm-hmm. So if feminism is sugar, this is the molasses, the school shooter, the lack of accountability, the whole thing. And I want to call it, I think it's a conservative talking point, the unintended consequences. So I don't think it's a malicious, purposeful thing, but it is there and it is a consequence.
Let me just chime in here real quick. There's this great quote that I always quote from Dalrock, and it's what I call the roller coaster quote. And it goes like this. He says, "These women don't want just to build a better beta. They want to tame the alpha. In fact, I think the former is just another way that they're trying to approach the latter. They want to take an inherently unsafe activity and make it safe. They want to submit to a man without having to submit. They want a man who can tame their feral self. They want him to trip all the danger signals, even better if he's a stranger from a strange land. They want this all to happen without giving up their freedom. They want to play this out in the context of serial monogamy, so they can feel loved while also claiming their promiscuity is moral. They want to lose control to a string of strangers who have all the hallmarks of very dangerous men, and they want a promise that this will always end well. They want to know that this will be safe without it losing its excitement or of feeling unsafe. They are telling men to build a sort of serial monogamy amusement park where they can ride the roller coaster and experience the fear of falling or crashing, while knowing that just behind the scenes, our grown-ups are there and actually in charge and are responsible for them feeling safe.
The contract in 50 Shades of Grey.
Exactly. Well, one more thing is as I mentioned above, they don't want to be hemmed in. So instead of building an actual amusement park, they want roller coasters to spring up randomly in the same exact circumstances where the real danger they mimic would appear. They want to be driving the car on the freeway one instant and then the next experience the fear of careening out of control. They want to impulsively jump off the edge of the Grand Canyon and have a parachute appear and deploy at the last minute. And all they ask is that your guarantee that all of this will be safe.
These are almost exactly literal scenes out of the new 50 Shades of Grey movie, the final one in the trilogy. Yeah. Like the car driving out of control, it being safe, the billionaire dude who's just so fucking alpha, everything's always perfect. Like, yeah, I mean, 100%.
I think that I think that this goes to what I was talking about earlier. Women want all of the benefits of alpha males without any of the costs. Okay, they want a guy who could fuck a bunch of broads, who's not going to fuck a bunch of broads. Listen, you can't have it both ways. If a man knows he can get pussy, guess what? He's going to get pussy. There's no such thing as a monogamous alpha male. It can't be done. And the only reason why an alpha male is monogamous is because he chooses to be. And a lot of times, even then, he slips up. You cannot have one without the other. Just like you said earlier, or like I was talking about earlier, they want to be able to regulate masculinity, and you can't do it. And the reason you can't do it is let's say that there was this mythical Christian Grey out there. If Christian Grey really existed, whatever the bitch's name is that I don't even know. I've never read the books. I've never seen the movies or anything, but whatever the chick's name is, she wouldn't really be attracted to Christian Grey as soon as she married him. Why? Because a tamed man, a kept man is an unattractive man. He has lost his edge. He has lost his feralness. He's lost his freedom. Women want all of the benefits without any of the cost, and it just doesn't work that way.
Can you comment? I think I saw you tweet about this recently, and maybe Rollo as well. The disappearance of the noble patriarch kind of disappearing over time in American culture, Western culture for that matter. Because it's kind of like what you're saying, Donovan. Like, yeah, alpha men are not inherently monogamous, and if they can get pussy, they're going to get it. But they still have some control over their own actions and behaviors, and then they might still slip up.
Oh, sure.
But that guy is disappearing now. That guy who's like, all right, I can do this, but let me not do that.
Right, because the reason why the fabled alpha male isn't settling down anymore is because, like we said earlier, there's no benefit to settling down. It's not worth it anymore. It's a better lifestyle to go out and fuck a bunch of bitches and not have to gamble away your half of your current and future earnings for a woman who can just divorce you on a whim, get the prenup thrown out, and take half your shit and your kids. It's just not worth it anymore. So that's why alpha males say, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna fuck bitches till I die.
I am. Hop in. You got something put in?
Yeah. So I'm not like intellectually and philosophically, I'm not pro just fuck every bitch you can see, because I think in like a wider perspective, like if every man just fucked every woman he thought that was hot, and he committed to none of those women, how would our sons look, and how would our civilization look?
Right.
Like it would be terrible. It would be like even if there were guys in this chat right now who are like, hey, well, I like fucking whores, like even that man would admit, yeah, that would be shit. Like we would not live in a civil, because there's no women here. We are capable of logic, and we know that this does not lead to sanity and order and a healthy and correct society. And I know correct is a subjective term. What I mean by correct is, well, it's not so fucked up that things aren't functional, right? Like there's a degree of order to it. However, and this is a very big however, I understand why men are like, fuck it, I am just going to have sex with whores prostitutes, sluts, promiscuous women. I understand why they think and feel like this, and I'll expand on this more. Is that prior to feminism, most women were virgins when they got married, right? So they weren't promiscuous. Now, if your wife is a virgin these days, you're in the minority. Like, you are in the minority, and even if your wife is a virgin and you think, oh yeah, she's probably a virgin, you know, there'll probably be some doubt in your mind. Well, is she really a virgin? But prior to feminism, it was the opposite way around. Most women were actually virgins before marriage. Most women were not promiscuous before marriage. Most women actually, you know, they had. I mean, most feminist women do not have fathers in their lives, and if they do have fathers in their lives, the fathers are soy, right? So if you have no father, and it's the same for boys and girls. If your father is soy or you have no father, you may as well have no father, because you do not have it's like yin and yang, right? Masculine, feminine. If you have no father in your life, or you have a guy who is basically embodied and adopted the feminine in his life, then as a how do you say, like the offspring, or like the student of that individual, you do not have that masculine energy. So you suffer because of that. So most women, the reason most women are not adequately feminine these days is because is due to a lack of masculinity in their lives, and it's the same reason why. And that there is an extra. Sorry, I have too many thoughts linking at the same time. But basically, it's the same reason why a lot of guys are soy. That they don't have masculine father figures in their lives. However, there is an additional factor for boys that does not include girls, which is that due to the chemical revolution, we have endocrine disruptors, chemicals in our environments.
Well, let me put a Kathy Newman on you. So what you're saying is the presence of a male is not the most important point. The most important point is the presence of masculinity, which the soy fathers are not going to bring.
Well, okay, so one would think that exactly, precisely. And one would think that a father is synonymous with masculinity, and it should be synonymous with masculinity. Yeah. And throughout most of history, it has been synonymous with masculinity. But at this current moment in time, it is the least synonymous. And by synonymous, I mean equivalent to. It's the least equivalent. A man, when you're a child, a man, an adult man being present in your life is the least equivalent to masculinity than it has ever been. Having an older man in your life who has an XY chromosome is insufficient, because, and I'm sure Rollo would agree with this, if that man has internalized the feminine imperative and he agrees with feminists, and his primary viewpoint is that of what is good for women, then how can he be good to boys, and how can he have a boy's primary interest, because he sacrificed his own masculine interest. And I'm not trying to be divisive or polarizing. Whilst I'm saying this, you know, masculine and feminine are both legitimate energies within all people. Men embody a smaller degree of femininity, and like healthy men, they have a degree. Like, if you can't empathize with your woman, if your woman's sad and you cannot sympathize with her, and you cannot relate to her in any way, then you don't have any feminine energy in you. If a woman cannot understand why you are angry at an injustice, she has no masculine energy. Like, if you understand the yin yang symbol, you know that yang, and I'll probably get too abstract, but yang has yin within it. Yang has yin within it, and yin has yang within it. So the masculine has a little bit of feminine in it, and the feminine has a little bit of masculine in it. But what we have these days is supposed symbols of masculinity who are just completely saturated with femininity, and they claim to be masculine. And that's what a lot like think. Does the average guy have Jocko Willink as his father? he doesn't. Like if like a suit like a lot of modern boys do not have a father at all. If they do have a father, and
he's nothing like Jocko,
right? And you had to rate that father or like that father's masculinity on a rank of 1 to 10, like you would rank a woman's attractiveness. Like, where do you think the average father ranks on a 1 to 10 level of masculinity? Like, dude, I'm telling you, some fuck.
yeah,
true.
Some fuck.
Dude, and their hero is Milo Yiannopoulos. Just
right, yeah.
putting that out there.
Well,
I do.
Let me just hold on just 1 second here. I was going to say is that what you're talking about right now sort of goes back to what I got into in positive masculinity, in that we teach our boys at the earliest possible ages right now to take themselves off the pedestal and put womankind or womankind on the pedestal, meaning that I'm always a big proponent of mental point of origin. And I think that one of the key factors in guys unplugging and really becoming red pill aware is putting themselves as their primary mental point of origin.
Yes.
But what I don't really get into too much, actually I probably should write a post about this, is that we teach our boys these days to put women as their mental point of origin, and we're constantly and so you got these kids, these poor boys who want to be girls desperately. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have transsexual boys wanting to be girls, because it's more advantageous to be a girl.
Exactly. If you I mean, I haven't looked at this, and I'm taking a very wild guess here right now, but if you look at like transsexuals, if you look at the statistics, like the comparison between males to females and females to males
to females,
exactly. That's what I was going to say. I assume males to females is far higher, and you know why? Easier life, greater social acceptance. If you're a very weak man, you're and you know you're very low T, and life's getting on top of you, and you're just like fuck this shit, and maybe you're a little bit sick and a little bit mentally ill, and you're very low TML, and you've got all this like SJW transsexual shit being accepted. You will probably be willing.
This gets to that point too. Just recently, there's been this kid that's in the news. He's in my Twitter feeds, and he is this 10-year-old boy who has been encouraged and groomed to be the heir apparent to RuPaul. He's supposed to be this transsexual drag queen kid. He's got his own dance show. He's got his own dating service. And all they're doing with this kid is patting him on the back and telling him, you go, sexualizing this little boy who's 10 years old to be just like the next RuPaul that's coming. And I will guarantee you that kid will probably be invited onto RuPaul's show Drag Strip. I guarantee you that'll happen at some point. And they'll praise him and they'll jump all over him and tell him it's great. And they'll sexualize this kid. But if you do the same thing to a little girl who is 10 years old in like these little pretty princess pageants, or these girls who go out and dance, really provide like strippers, these 10-year-old, 8-year-old girls who go out and dance like Trizza, we will say that that's the worst thing in the world, and I can't believe men are all about this, and they'll just say this is abhorrent. But a boy that does that will praise him for that.
It's going to be more fucked than Corey Feldman, man. It's fucking sad. It really is.
If we get some guys who served in the U.S. military here and have done a tour in Afghanistan, they would tell you in Afghanistan and a lot of this is the thing: men who serve in the U.S. military do not have freedom of speech. We don't even have a First Amendment in Britain, right? But no one's come to my house and arrested me and fucking locked me up, right? So what I assume from that is that as a British guy with no First Amendment, I have more free speech rights than a fucking U.S. soldier. U.S. soldiers who have served a tour in Afghanistan have seen.
Canada is the same thing. It's balanced against the needs of the public, or some wording, soft language like that. But same thing in your military, you lose that.
It's all bullshit. Like if you went back 500 years, right, like a pre-soy time, would Justin Trudeau, in a sensible masculine society, ever
person society?
Like in a society, and I don't mean this as a slight against Canada. I mean this is like a thought experiment, right? We can pretend we're talking about Britain, right? Because I'm not trying to get on a nationalist angle about this, right? But like Justin Trudeau, or Trudeau. I don't know, some French shit, like whatever.
Trudeau.
What's it? Trudeau. Yeah.
Yeah, gargle.
Oh God,
He-
Captain Soy.
but like he does, he's not Trump, he's not Putin, he does not, he doesn't make you want to stand up for your country and like defend your land, does he? Like you see him and you're like, you're just like like you see this guy, he's meant to like lead your people, and you think no,
he does not represent the electorate, which is the single job of
exactly.
the executive branch.
Dude, the current leader of the UK is a fucking some chick in her like 50s, right? So, and like and the leader of
ours hot. Ours is hot.
I mean, your leader's a guy, but I mean, he's not really.
Gentlemen, before we begin winding this down, I wanted to ask, open to anyone, but starting with Rollo. Rollo, this is based on a link that we shared earlier. I don't think we hit on this in the call yet. How will the feminine imperative and feminism spin a mass shooting that happens by a teenage girl, as almost recently happened? There was a link on it in ABC News. A girl's father turned her in because she was prepping physically and planning things out, shooting up her school. How do you, eventually that's probably going to happen. How do you think, do you have any thoughts on like how the mainstream media will respond to that?
Well, I think that the feminine, I mean, you're talking about that girl who shot up the schools?
She almost did. Her father.
She almost did. Yeah. There was that. There's that. It's funny. Yeah. You showed me that story, and then now that you mentioned it, it was another story where a girl had actually shot up a school.
Okay.
And I think it's interesting how they sweep that kind of under the carpet. But I think that if that were to be the case, if it were to be more like say a few more girls decided that they were going to go and shoot up the school, I will guarantee you that they will spin that story to make it sound as if the girl had been bullied or the girl had been driven over the edge, how cyberbullied. It'll be a cyberbullying kind of thing, or and then it will be girls have to deal with so much these days, and it'll be this plea for understanding and acknowledgement. It won't be anything about femininity. It won't be anything about a toxic femininity or anything like that. It will be like, one more. It'll be one more victim for the victimhood mill is what it'll be.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Thelma and Louise.
Yeah.
Dude, you watched that. Remember, what was it? Monster was the one? And she was like this horrible, it was like a female serial killer. I can't remember. It's been a while now. Do you guys remember the movie I'm talking about, right? Where Charlize Theron played an ugly chick? And that was the focus. It's just going to be ignored. They made her an ugly chick, and that was the focus. That a pretty girl would play somebody not pretty because she was that good of an actor. So it's going to be completely ignored. And it's going to be used for some other girl to make her bones. Guaranteed. Or it's just going to be ignored and nothing will come of it. But if something does, it's going to be spun to a positive, which is fucked up.
I know. I think Bob Geldof's probably going to write another hit about it.
Yeah.
For those who don't get the reference, the Cleveland elementary school shooting was perpetrated by, what's her name? Brenda Ann Spencer, and Bob Geldof wrote a song about it called "I Don't Like Mondays."
Holy fuck!
Are you looking that up right now?
I am. I'm like,
no,
turns it into a Garfield song. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, I think that one of the things we always have to consider when there's anything that's ever unflattering towards women. The spin is always to cast women in a victimhood role. So it's not a woman who, and we've talked about this in several different blog posts, and it's do women have a moral agency? Do they have a rational agency? Because, and I've written like I said a couple of posts about this, but there's a difference between agency and hypo-agency. Now, are women just these, beings that things happen to, and that would be hypo-agency, or do they actually have an agency? Should they be held responsible for their own actions? Do they have any kind of conscious choice in what it is that they're doing? Because generally, when something bad happens or something unflattering happens to the feminine, it's always because horrible, evil men put them into that position, and they had no other choice but to do with the things that they have done. Now, the counter to this, and I've butted heads with a lot of trad cons about this, is that it is men's fault, and they're taking that side. It's men's fault that we're in this position that we're in today. And from a certain respect, I understand that, but I don't think that it is entirely men's fault for the social conditions that we find ourselves in today, because what that does is it makes women just these ambiguous, hypo agents that things just well, it's all our fault for the victimhood of women. I don't see that at all. I think that once the sexual revolution hit, and once we unfettered hypergamy, we had a rise in abortions. We had a rise in divorce rate. We've had a rise in
single motherhood.
Yeah, single motherhood, divorce laws, everything that I can point out legislatively because of that. You name pretty much any issue that MRAs or MGTOWs have. That's when that started. Now, is it men's fault, or is it the nature of women that's prompting them to that? And I think that it's probably a little bit of both. I do understand that men need to at least, they need to be the most dominant voice in the room, but most men won't do that for a variety of reasons. First of all, they've been raised to put women, to be supportive of women, and to put women as their mental point of origin. And then a guy comes around, such as myself or us or anybody in here, and we want to say, hey, look, that's not the way it is. Those guys get shouted down. And so is that because men didn't man up and they didn't take responsibility for women because they need to have their responsibility taken care of? I've got a post that's called Our Sister's Keeper. And if you want to dig in more to that, it comes back to personal responsibility. And tradcons love personal, if anything, they love personal responsibility. So, but the personal responsibility, even for those guys, is not on the women. It's still on the men. And feminine imperative will be happy to exploit that, and will be happy to use that.
Rollo, how does what you're talking about now tie into equalism and the absolute parity that equal parity that a lot of purple pillars and tradcons will also cling to if they don't just go that route?
I honestly think that feminism today is really just the religion of equalism, or it's meant to be. Where equalism is sort of a farce. It's sort of the cover story for feminism, and equalism are the cover story for a feminine supremacism right now, or female supremacism right now. We want everything to be equal, and women, particularly in the femisphere, on that side of the margin, want to say that they're not responsible for things, but then they still want to enjoy the idea that they are strong, independent women. So, what is it?
But mentor me too. Mentor me. Mentor her.
Yeah, mentor me as well. And it comes back again to, they want an equality of outcome, but they don't want necessarily, they want both an equality of outcome and an equality of opportunity. I can understand an equality of opportunity, fine. But with that comes the responsibility of accepting your losses and accepting the damage that comes from those decisions that you've made. Women don't want that. They want an equality of outcome. That's why we say, well, only like 5% of Fortune 500 companies have a female CEO. Well, is that a problem is that a problem of opportunity, or is that a problem of outcome? And I will tell you right now, more and more, when we look at women getting into positions of power, we look at them going and serving in a political capacity, or women going to school more than men right now, women graduating more than men right now. And there's a lot of details and a lot of nuances to that. Of course, what are they majoring in and everything else. But when you look at that, you look at the opportunity is there. When you look at Title IX, when you look at all these advantages and all these concessions that we make for women, and we actively disadvantage men, you cannot claim that it's any more about sexism or any more about a lack of opportunity. But now what they want is an equality of outcome, and that one does not stem from the other. And so I've got another post called the lie of equality, and that sort of comes back to that, is like we're assuming that equality exists in the first place. We're presuming that that equality is in a vacuum, and that environment and challenges and everything else that would affect an equal footing from one to another are fair, okay? And that's simply, life isn't fair. Environment's not fair. So how can you really have any sort of equality? I can't play professional basketball. I'm only, 6 foot. If I was 7, well, am I going to say it's not fair? Please lower the baskets for me so I can dunk.
Oh, Rolo,
Well, that
just be
changes the nature of the game. Then it changes it so I can compete, and but is it really the same game? No, it's not. And that is exactly what women want right now. They want to have the baskets lowered. They want to have everything accommodate their own personal strengths.
The military is a great example of that too.
Exactly.
Yeah, they do that. There's all kinds of standards that are being lowered and stuff.
Oh, in Canada, we have a fitness test. Now, it was the old fitness test that was there before I left, but the female standard, and it's just shuttle run stuff, some beep tests. I won't bore you with the details, but the female standard was so laughably low that it was almost like it was laughably low. It was very hard to fail, and even then, the failure rate was higher than it should have been. Mind you, we were Navy, so we're the fattest element, but
so much for equality.
Yeah, well, and they've already done that in the United States now too. They have completely changed the requirements. And there's one requirement for men and there's one requirement for women. But the ultimate test is how are they going to serve in a combat capacity?
Oh yeah, you guys said that
women to pick up a gun and go out there and be equal with the men. Then they're going to have to measure up to those standards. But that they're changing those standards, and I'm sure that our enemies aren't changing their standards.
Of course.
Yeah, and do you remember that trad thought that had the argument with Roosh back in the day? It was something like, if the alt-right wants women, you have to accommodate that. You remember that whole thing that started his little rant about that, right? Well, there was a Marine officer who did the same thing, saying if you want more female Marine officers, you got to be more accommodating. And it was weird how in that TradCon Roosh thing, as well as the Marine artillery officer thing, they had the exact same argument that, do you want women here? Well, then make it more accommodating. Make it work for us. As opposed to a mission focus, it's a person focus, which for the military is something that just does not work, because you can't not focus on the objective and expect to be effective.
Yeah, people are going to get fucking killed.
They will get killed.
We're ignoring we're ignoring a reality so that women can participate. And again, once more, it goes back to that roller coaster quote that I quoted from Dalrock. They want to live the danger. They want to be out there, but they want to know that behind the scenes, somebody's going to make sure the parachute opens and that they're going to be okay and they're going to be safe. And now they are taking that to the extreme of, dropping or, wanting to change the game of military combat.
And the irony is it's blatant sexism.
Yeah, that too.
There's a buffer because our technology is good enough.
Thing there.
Oh, what?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, the unfortunate thing is the fact that I don't think 50 caliber machine guns got the feminine mystique. I'm not sure if bullets are aware that they're not supposed to hit women.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the thing though. 50 cals on a Toyota truck, that's the enemy. We have the West has way higher technology, so that we have a buffer there that you can essentially be less effective as a combat unit, because a fighter jet will beat a pickup truck any day. But at some point, like if you're getting to like an Iraq insurgency or that situation, that's where the issue kind of matters. And that's why I'm worried that this frontline female troop thing that the Americans just passed, I think you guys passed it last year. I think the next occupation that happens, God forbid it doesn't, I think that's where you're going to see the consequences of these decisions coming in. Yep. And it's not going to be pretty. And the problem is, like everything, men are going to be blamed.
That's right. Yep. I was going to actually ask
fault. Every guy that's in a decision-making capacity said, yes, we want women there. So it is technically their fault. Technically.
Speaking of war, before we close this out, I want to ask all of you guys, how much longer until we get revisionist history being mainstream to blame masculinity for like every war ever, or at least all the wars in the past 100 years, both world wars at this point? We're still like
we're already doing it.
Yeah, it seems like it's already happened. Like, we're seeing the beginnings of that. So, can anyone, Rolo, Black Lab Logic, can you speak to that? Or I am?
Nobody reads history anyway. They'll just watch it on a 10-minute YouTube video. So whatever gender studies guy wants to make a YouTube video with some cartoons, that's what's going to work.
It just comes to mind, like, Rolo talking about toxic masculinity becoming masculinity itself is toxic. It's like, any war that's going to happen in the future, for example, I'm sure masculinity is going to get the blame from day one.
It's already getting the blame. It's got the blame for everything. Yeah, go ahead, Carl. Go ahead, Carl. I'll come in later.
No, I was just going to say it's going to be interesting to see how the story of the Trojan War is going to change, because that was essentially a story about how masculine virtue versus masculine vice. You have a guy who kidnaps his one-itis, and you have her alpha coming to rescue him. And it's going to be interesting to see how that changes from a historical perspective, because those are historical events.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, we already want to change those events. We want to change those to you know, to be a little more PC, to be a little bit more, you know, publicly palatable right now. But I think that when it comes to, a lot of people say, well, what we need is a new war. We need another war so men can be men and women can, you know, finally understand, you know, the reality of their situation. The wake up call is going to be when we get another war. And I'm not of the opinion that we need to get in another war. Okay, I think that we can find ways right now to push ourselves back up into a positive masculine role. I think a war would certainly facilitate that, but I don't wish for a war.
Yeah, so would a Soviet-style collapse, but nobody fucking wants that.
Exactly, and everyone wants to say, "Well, you're just all about enjoy the decline." No, I'm not. I've never been about enjoy the decline.
I am.
Objective. When you say war, people think in a physical dimension. They think of men in trenches getting muddy and getting like bullets fired at them. War isn't one dimensional. War is like war used to be one dimensional. Now it's multi-dimensional, right? So what does war consist of? It's one religion trying to displace your religion. It's an ethnicity trying to displace your ethnicity. It's another strong ideology of another nation, let's say communism, trying to displace capitalism. It is across all dimensions and all aspects. It isn't simply masculinity versus femininity. Like, I guarantee whoever hates you, if they can declare war on you and wipe you out and make sure you never exist ever again, I am very, very, very confident that they have enough masculine energy to make sure that happens, because if they didn't, it wouldn't happen. So it isn't simply masculinity versus femininity, although that is an important dimension. It's multifactorial, right? So there are many aspects there. So in 100 years, I mean, you know, I don't like the us versus them, and I would like a world where everyone is rational and logical and considers things and tries to tolerate one another. But in 100 years from now, honestly, what do I think? I think people will look back at history. They will see who was most successful 100 years ago. So that's predominantly Western European and the North American powers, not really Canada, mostly the United States. And they would say, yeah, those guys were assholes. And what were they genetically comprised of? Oh, white guys, so they're all assholes. That's what they will say, and they won't look into it any more than that. Right. They won't look into it any more than that. That's how they will discriminate, and they will not be feminine in that, because if they are feminine, they will not replace you, because femininity does not have the energy for conquering. Femininity obeys, and it surrenders to anything that is strong enough to
dominate it.
Yeah, to dominate it, to conquer it, right? So that even though masculinity and femininity is a very important dimension, it's not the only dimension. And honestly, I wish it was the only dimension, because then we could just basically make TRT mandatory for men, and we would just dominate everything. But unfortunately, it's not as simple as that.
Well, you know, I was going to say is that hold up for a second. I was going to say is that whenever you talk to women and it comes down to issues of, say, like the draft, you know, how men have only been the ones who've been conscripted. I mean, in this country anyways, I'm not talking about Israel or anything like that. When we look at that, women always say, well, if women were in charge, then there would be no wars. Then there would be no conflict, because women would, you know, come together in peace and understanding in some rational way. And they would want to say that all the wars in the past have been the direct result of men and masculinity and talking. And if men would just give us the reins of power, we would show you that. Of course, and you can't prove the negative, right?
Wait, like, if you think of the British Empire, do you know who led the British Empire? A woman. Her name was Queen Victoria. She hated the feminists and she hated lesbians. And you can you can Google this, right? The leader of the British Empire was a woman that hated feminists and lesbians. She thought all feminists should be whipped. You can Google the quotes on this. I'm not making this up. If a guy in 2018 says all feminists should be whipped, right? That guy is probably going to lose his job and lose all integrity and credibility. And yet the British monarch 100 years ago, there was a woman was saying all feminists should be whipped. They don't know their role and they're insolent. I'm not joking. Google, like, if you actually care about what I'm saying, you don't just want to call me an asshole, right? Google this, right? Queen Victoria did not like feminists, and she advocated domestic violence against feminists. I'm not making.
Well, the Iron Lady was the same way. She hated feminists.
Maybe you can say it, and then you'll be arrested for quoting. For a hate speech law, for quoting a queen of your former queen of your own country.
Right.
That's probably going to happen, right?
The other thing that they ignore about this whole thing is they ignore the fact that, you know, we have certain countries that are more egalitarian. We have countries that have feminist governments. So we look at Sweden. We look at the state of Sweden. Look at the state of Germany. Look at the state of, and I will just say this, you know, look at the state of, Canada.
Making me depressed right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at the more feminized, look at the feminized countries right now, and look what's happening to those countries. You know, they're being overrun by they're being overrun by more dominant Muslim refugees right now.
And the thing is, it doesn't even, like, everyone's like, oh, you hate Muslims, you don't like Islam, whatever. You know what? Who like, it is a relevant factor, but let's just disregard that for a second to get around people's prejudices and politically correct condition. It doesn't have to be Muslims. It can literally be any culture or any religion or any force that is more masculine than your culture, right?
It's policy actually in Canada. Have you guys not seen this? It's called the Century Initiative. Look it up. Centuryinitiative.ca, I think. There's a Canadian think tank whose plan is to triple Canadians' population by 2100. So
yeah, I've heard of this.
2 or 3 generations to triple our population.
I guarantee you they will not achieve this aim by encouraging the reproduction of British.
No, it's all immigration. It's flat. It is not
right.
Not a conspiracy theory. You can read it yourself.
I believe you. You know what the problem with this is? They do not take IQ into the equation. People who do not take IQ and just think, oh, we have a low population and we have a low reproduction.
Yeah, people are all interchangeable. Yeah.
And this is clearly bullshit. Because if that was true, then why isn't the whole world economically successful and full of skyscrapers and science and pharmaceuticals and nanotechnology and artificial intelligence? Why is it there's a few places in the world where there's all this success and money, and other places where there isn't success and money? And you say,
well, why can't I be taller because I'm eating better? That's the same argument.
Well, obviously it's masculinity's fault for all these.
Well, no. To answer my question, to rebut my own question, what SJWs will say? Oh, well, you stole all the resources. But if morons steal your resources, do they make good use of those resources? Do they invest them well? Do they profit from them? Do they have a compounding effect in that? Like, all right, if I steal $100 from you, right, and I make it into $1,000, then I've probably done something quite well, right? And if you say, oh, well, the reason you're rich is because you took $100 from me, but you don't recognize the fact I made $1,000 out of the $100 I took from you, then you're overlooking my capabilities. What you're looking at is that I got my start, I got my base from exploiting you, right? Now, if a dumb person, like, right, let me put it another way. If you think of lottery winners, right? Most smart people I speak to do not play the lottery. They don't. They invest and they work hard. They do not play the lottery. They don't really gamble much. They don't play the lottery. They don't do scratch cards. They do not do any of these things. That tends to be a lower IQ phenomenon, right? So, and if you listen to the stories of people who have won the lottery, they win a lot of money, and then they're poor within about 5 years, right? So they don't invest it. They don't use it to create a business. They have all this money that they didn't earn. They won it. They got lucky, and they spent it all. And now they're miserable, right? This is what happens when you give mass amounts of resources to stupid people. So when people say, "Oh, you stole all our resources, and that's the reason you're successful," this is nonsense. This is complete. I guarantee you, give any human, any group, whatever on the planet, $100 million right now, right? I guarantee you, and let's assume they are very stupid. Within 10 years, they will not be successful and they will not be rich. And this is what Western civilization, as it is right now, is constantly berated with. The only reason you're successful is because you stole resources from elsewhere. But if you invade someone, if you conquer someone, I'm trying not to go off topic too much, but if you invade,
Yeah, we got to start winding down in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, besides, Black Panther totally rebuts that.
Hey,
Exactly.
gentlemen, we've been going for 2.5 hours. I think it's time we start winding down. First of all, thanks to all of you for coming on, and Donovan as well, who's here for most of it. As far as websites and links, guys, they will be underneath the video for all these speakers. You can check it out right after the show. I'll update the video. Same link, you guys can watch it. Before we get going, Carl, Rollo, Ryan, do any of you have projects you guys kind of want to announce right now? Upcoming blog post, project, anything like that? By the way, with Rollo, we just published his first ever 21 Convention talk yesterday.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that that's up for free now. So if anybody wants to have a look at that, I'm probably going to put a post of it either today or tomorrow. The link is already in my Twitter feed, so if anybody wants to go see that, it's about an hour long, something like that.
And then a little over an hour.
My next one's coming up in the membership side of things, and then that'll go free as well. So.
Yep.
So that's coming up too. And right now I'm just working on the 4th book. I'm doing research for the 4th book, and it's going to be a little bit more targeted towards the religious guy, the spiritual guy. And I'm trying to reach out to the guys who I think have been really sort of misled by religion and being raised in a very purple pill would be nice, but in a very blue pill perspective. And I'm going to be, taking that to task. A lot of people know that I comment quite a bit on Dalrock, and if Dalrock and I were to write a book, this would be it. And I asked him to co-author with me on 3 occasions, and he's not into it. It's probably because he just does not want to be. He doesn't want to lose his anonymity, and I can understand that, particularly in this day and age. So I'm going it alone, but I'm not going it alone. I've got a lot of other guys helping me out from sort of the Christo red pill, and I shouldn't say it's going to be entirely about Christians. It'll be about religion in general. So that's coming up, but probably not till next year.
Count me in for promoting it. I think I'll be in the promotion scene. Speaking of Rollo's books, this is his 3rd book, The Rational Male, Positive Masculinity. The most recent one published last year. This is also what his 2nd talk at the 21 Convention focuses on. I joined Rollo on stage myself, and he focuses on these issues throughout the entire talk. That 2nd speech is coming soon to 21 University at 21university.com. You can watch it there for free with a 30-day trial, or it'll be on YouTube in a few months after that. Ryan, did you want to hop in on this? Anything?
Yeah, just on, you were asking if people had things to plug. I want to plug how Rollo was saying praxeology. Like, I don't have projects. To me, this was the hobby. It's a life hobby. There's 10,000 guys on Married Red Pill, 250,000 on the Red Pill. We're like an ad hoc think tank, and so I just want to articulate that this is how guys will build knowledge by just talking with each other, swapping notes. Yep. And I like to think that's why Rollo had me on with 21 Convention, and you guys invited me. I'm kind of the example of how that articulates in the world. Guys talk with each other, guys spread notes, and this is just a collection and it goes out. So yeah, no, I'm in it. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for the end result.
Yeah. That's how the whole convention started. It wasn't supposed to be a conference. It's supposed to be a meetup where we basically swap notes and ideas. So 100%, man.
Yeah.
Yep. Fuck yeah. I'll put links as well to the MRP and Red Pill underneath the video. As for Carl, guys, this is his book Gendernomics, my personal copy. It's a little dinged up. It's on Amazon, just like Rollo's book, Amazon.com. So you can get both books on Amazon. This book Carl could speak to. He put it out last year if he wants to. I've read almost all of it, 90%. I do need to finish up the last bit. Carl, do you want to speak to your book a little bit before we roll out?
Yeah, speaking of all the offense you've probably been causing, I'm personally offended you haven't finished it.
Yeah, no excuse, man. Just shit going on, busy life. It's gonna get done though, 100%. Just like the memo, right? You gonna release the memo, 100%. Yep.
Hey, I should also say that Donovan has his own his own YouTube channel, and
Yeah.
he's had me on there before. He's had Illimitable Man on there before. He gets a lot of good interviews. Definitely worth a subscription. So if you want to go check him out, I think you can just find him at what is it, Donovan Sharp on YouTube, and you'll find him.
There'll be a link as well in the video, guys. All the YouTube channels, Twitter accounts, all that stuff. We're going to load it up. So with that said, thanks to all of you for tuning in live, everybody watching, everybody, joining in live. Also, thanks for the super chats. I think we got over $20, $25 in that. I'm going to send all that to Jack Murphy for his legal fund. And that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next time, probably about 2 weeks from now. And appreciate it, guys.
Great. Thanks a lot. We'll do it again.
Yep. Stay on live. Stay on here, guys. I'm going to end the live broadcast.